What's up, NAI Hoop Report Nation? Before we get into the Heart of America and Frontier Conference previews, hand up, being honest here, we forgot to mention MBU, Missouri Baptist. They are officially going to be in the Heart. It was we knew it going into it. It was one of the first conference switches that was announced this offseason, but just forgot to do it. Happens, but we're gonna give the Spartans their time here. This will be their quick little preview, quick little season outlook for the Spartans. Like I said, they did join from the AMC, which we will be covering in a little bit. They made the tournament in the AMC. Wasn't the best season for the Spartans, but Lex, tell us about who's coming back, possibly who are they losing, possibly, and then just your take real quick on the Spartans and what you think for them this year.
The Spartans, honestly, going into the season joining the Heart, I definitely kind of see like not a break right, but more of like an at the door kind of situation for them. Looking into their roster, at least from what we have from the past year with their previous conference, they do have a decent amount of seniors, looking at maybe 4 to 5, which means that's already a solid rotation that could possibly be out, but you never know. With them stepping into a new conference, they aren't necessarily updated as far as what we can see, but I do see them as far as their impact being more of like a at the door break, right, kind of situation. They do have a lot of issues offensively with their turnovers, from what I saw at least almost 18 per game. Increasing that down, increasing their points up per game. That way they can get to a point where they're fighting with, the Heart of America. And we already know they're a very top heavy and they're very physical and dominant when it do come to that offensive factor. So as long as they can handle their weight with that, and whoever they recruit in and stepping into this new conference can definitely help with that, then they definitely have a very decent shot of, putting up a fight.
I agree. I do think they're more of an at-the-door team. Obviously, they possibly could be returning Riley Jensen and Marina Corbiro. Low scoring for them, but could be expecting a development year for them, stepping into a new role when you lose a Sophia Horton and Kylie Winch, both 10-plus point per game scorers. Is going to be hard to replace, especially for an offense that was already under 60. You're going to need, like you said, recruiting, developing from the inside to try and help. As far as the Heart, I just think it adds into their depth. I think the Heart now understands it. There's going to be some teams, maybe record-wise, you're not going to necessarily look at them and think they're going to be a challenge, but on any given night in the Heart, we've seen with the physicality, the way that these teams play, the way that they're going to wear you down, especially through a long season.
Exactly.
They're definitely going to fit that mold, so I think it'll be an interesting aspect for them for sure. They do have their schedule out on the website. Actually about 3 or 4 games I kind of am looking at. William Baptist. They are an AMC team, one of the best in the AMC, along with somebody else that we'll talk about in our AMC preview when that comes out. But William Baptist, I think, is going to be a good test for them. Again, a familiar foe, trying to see how they can do. And then we've got Columbia College, another solid team that they're going to have to play. And then University Health and Science Pharmacy, they didn't have a great year last year, but for those who know my interview with Coach Cox, he's developing that program, building it from the ground up, so to speak, and that year 2 is always the one where you could be a little bit dangerous and they can maybe catch a few teams. So I think that's a good measuring stick for Missouri Baptist. And then their conference opener is against Clarke. It'll be at home, so that'll be a nice little welcome to the HOA moment for them. But I think we both agree this is more of a at the door team. I could see them making the playoffs. I could also see them kind of missing in their first year, but I'm very excited to see what they definitely bring to the Heart of America. But with that, I will send you guys to the official episode for the Heart and the Frontier conferences. What's up, NAIA Hoop Reporters? It's your boy Manny here, and welcome to another edition of the Hoop Report, the NAIA Women's Basketball Podcast. So excited for you guys. There's episode 4, I want to say. Already 4 episodes in. It feels like time is flying by. Part 2 this might be... I'm going to have to bring in Lex because I'm losing track already. Lex, what number are we at already with this? I think this is part 3, actually.
This might be 3.
I think this is 3. I think this is part 3. You are correct there. But as you guys can see, joined here by, of course, my good buddy Darlex, getting ready for another conference preview, part 3 of our 10-part to preview all the conferences in the NAIA. I'm hoping I get the episode number right. I'm pretty sure. I know we're like one ahead on the episode count. So if we're in part 3, I'm pretty sure we're in episode 4. I think. I have so many numbers, and again, we're recording these things on like ahead and all that kind of stuff, so I'm kind of getting confused already. But I'm pretty sure it's safe saying an episode.
I'm pretty sure this is 3 or 4.
It's definitely 3 or 4. So we're gonna say episode 4, and if it's not, oh well, it is what it is. But just let you know that we're fully invested. We are just focusing on. We're seeing so many numbers, so many stats, all these type of things. So honestly, I'm not surprised that we're getting some of these numbers mixed up. But here again for another conference preview. Like I said, we're going to be doing the Heart of America this episode as well as the Frontier. This part of the episode will be the Heart of America. If you guys want to listen to the Frontier, you're going to have to go scroll down a little bit for that part of this episode. Very excited to get into this one. Another conference that I think is on the rise. I don't think they're necessarily a powerhouse yet, but they will be a strong contender with going to be putting out a lot of national contender teams. Going to be a great conference to watch as we get into the spring, and a lot of good things coming out of this one. And another conference that we kind of, found a niche, their identity and their physicality, and we're definitely going to talk about that with each of these teams. But as we always do here, before we get into anything else, Darlex's Corner. We're going to talk about, Lex, what were your takeaways from the Heart of America? What did you see? Again, housekeeping rules if this is your first time watching our conference previews. There was a Google form that got sent out. Some coaches responded, some coaches didn't. As I always say, nothing against the coaches, but that is obviously going to determine and affect our numbers and our stats and all that kind of stuff. And as for the stats and the numbers that we did get off the Heart of America website and all the school websites, so those are kind of housekeeping stuff so you guys understand where we got these numbers and where we got this person's coming back, but this person isn't, and all that kind of stuff. So we're pretty comfortable in our information, not saying it's all concrete. And again, we're going to fall at the mercy of the sword and the people for some of these, but it's fine. But with all that out of the way, Lex, Heart of America, what was your initial thoughts, your big takeaways, and as we get ready to preview another great conference?
You kind of took the words out of my mouth earlier when you said up and coming. HOA has the potential to be one of the front runners very soon. I think if they fine tune a couple things, they already have 2 or 3 heavy hitters, which we'll touch on pretty soon. But all they really need to do is kind of harp on some of their weakening factors and really hone in on that. And it'll definitely be easily top 5 in conferences when it comes to what the NAIA can produce.
No, I definitely agree. I think physicality is going to be the biggest thing for this conference, and we're going to, again, almost every single one of these teams has a constant theme and a constant stat that I'm sure we each looked at. But before we get any deeper, let's look at, of course, our recap from last year. We'll start with the standings. As you see, MidAmerican Nazarene were your regular season number 1 seed conference champions going into the tournament, followed by Grandview, Benedict, Missouri Valley, Mount Mercy, Park, Culver-Stockton, and Clarke to round out your playoff teams. And then Baker, Central Methodist, Graceland, Peru, and William Penn all were outside looking in. As you can also see there, your national contending teams were the top 3 in the conference: MidAmerican Nazarene, Grandview, and Benedict. Very good conference for sure. When we look at the recap for the postseason awards, again, you see there regular season champions were MidAmerican. Conference champions were Benedictine. That was a very, very just kind of shows how deep this conference was last year, because MidAmerican was a great team and Benedictine got hot at the right time. You see your first team all conference members along with your postseason awards, your second team all conference members, third team and all defensive in the bottom left. Ella Larson from Grandview, Player of the Year. Kenna Sheknick from MidAmerican, Newcomer of the Year and DPOY. And then John Lewis and Alexis McAfee from MidAmerican were your Coach and Assistant Coach of the Year. And Zaylee Worth from MidAmerican was your Freshman of the Year. So congratulations to all those respective players and all the all-conference and all-defensive team honorees. Alexis is very interesting because this is one of this episode, honestly, for this and for the Frontier, I'm so glad I actually put these teams together. It was completely on accident. But there's teams coming into the conference for both of these teams. Obviously, for the Frontier, it's a whole crazy thing, and I'm kind of excited to get touch on them. But the Heart of America will be getting a new team added in this year with William Woods, and that's going to be, honestly, where we start our first question of the day. How does William Woods affect the conference when they go in? Second question will be, what is more likely to happen? Benedict and Missouri Valley taking a step back, or Grandview and MidAmerica staying on top, and then who from the 9 through 13 or 9 through 14 spot now will join that 5 through 8, so the bottom of the playoffs, who comes out. As you guys always know, we got to make sure that we're being realistic here. And then who from 5 through 8 will join the 1 through 4, so the team that can host a first round in the conference tournament. And again, who comes out, and you see your tiers lists at the end like we always do: contenders, playoff locks, at the door, and break right. Very excited to get into it, but we're gonna start with William Woods. Like we always do, we'll talk about every single team. We'll talk about all the teams out there. But before we talk about the teams from last year, I do think it's good to start with the team that's coming in, because gonna be transparent here. Neither one of us knew William Woods is coming in. You know, it wasn't until we were kind of doing our last minute kind of research and doubling back on our notes that I was going through the conference, and I realized, they're going to go into the HOA. Last year, they were part of the American Midwest. They're actually a very good team. They're a really good team in the American Midwest, so I'm kind of curious on your take. How do you see I don't think William Woods is going to be top contender, at least right now. Again, I'm talking about this in August. But I do think the floor is going to be a scrappy team that can make the playoffs in their first year, which could affect some things. So where do you see William Woods kind of shaking up the conference this year in the HOA?
This kind of goes into, I believe it was a third question, falling into who within the 5 to 9 range end up stepping out. And I definitely feel like if there's any team that's going to come in and cause some stuff to shake, it's going to be William Woods. They have the potential, and because we don't know much about them, we don't know who's returning, who's really leaving, and the factors that play into it. But from what we saw from them last year, I would easily place them top 5.
I can see that. I can see that. You know, last year they did make the AMC conference tournament. AMC, I talked about it with Coach Markel Cox in our second episode of the podcast this year. Great conference. Very underrated conference. I think they're going to get a lot of love this year. It's not easy to make the tournament that year. And, you know, I did go into the website kind of looking real quick. According to the website, they do have a new coach. That is a guarantee. Morgan Scott, she will be the new coach at William Woods. So congratulations to her for getting that job and being able to take that team into a new era. Obviously, joining one conference from another is a very hard thing to do at any level of college sports. Looking at the roster, because they do have their 2025-2026 roster up on the website. Granted, it might not be the full roster. I'm not saying it is, because judging by how many there are there, I don't think that it is the most. 4 new players so far. So that could be a good thing, could be a bad thing, depending on how you look at it. That doesn't mean that you're going to have a good returning core from last year's team that made to the conference tournament in the AMC. Jersey Warren, I believe that is how you say her name. 9 points, 3.2 assists, 34% from the field. Very solid player. Could be a returning player that kind of keep an eye on. They could be losing a Peyton Deering, who averaged 13 a game, Sydney Booker, who averaged 12 and 9, and then India Atkins, who averaged 10 points. You're losing a lot of offense there. I have it right here in my notes. I feel like they're a hard team to dissect, because you're losing those 3 players I just mentioned. Plus, you're bringing a new coach. Plus, you're going into a new conference. There's just a lot of unknowns with them. So I do agree that they feel like a team that could go from middle of the pack, like firmly in the playoff picture. I'm not saying like 8 or 7, but more like 5-4 area, to you do miss the playoffs, because, again, this is a loaded conference and you're going to be fighting tooth and nail every single day. So I'm very curious on that end. They also do have, and we're going to start doing this more now that you and I have more time to be able to kind of deep dive into these teams. Some of them do have their schedules out. So I did write for certain teams who do some key dates to keep in mind. For William Woods, they play William Baptist on November 8th. They had their conference opener against Peru State. And then they also have a game against Columbia College. All those kind of early on in the season. I think those would be a great test. I'm very curious on that Peru State game. That's on the 15th of November, so fairly early in the season. And again, a lot of times with these conferences that have more than, I would say, about eight or so teams, typically the way it goes for anybody who may be new to the NAIA or isn't fully aware of it, you have about 3 games in the fall for your conference, and then the rest of them are in the spring. Typically, that's how it goes. For the teams, again, for the conferences that have like this 14 teams, 13 teams, that kind of stuff, it's kind of hard to try and cram it all within a 2.5 month. So they do about 3. And those 3 can be important because, again, November is the beginning of the year. So you might drop a game that you don't feel like you should drop, or pick up a game because you take advantage of a team still figuring stuff out, and then you look back at the end of the year and that actually became a very important thing. So I do think William Woods has that potential. Like, that's why I feel like that conference opener against a Peru State team, that could help. You know, I do think William Woods in that game, I know it's kind of early. We're not necessarily picking winners and losers. I could see William Woods taking that game, a high of a new era, excited to be a part of the HOA, all that kind of stuff kind of playing into it. I could see them kind of maybe going 2-1 of those 3 conference games, maybe, especially because that one is at home. So you do have a fair number of games at home. I think they have a chance to upset some people. And again, middle of the pack, just because we don't know how high they're going to be. And it's kind of hard to pick like up in this conference with the 4 that we're going to talk about, or they could also kind of fall towards the bottom. And so I'm very curious to see how they do it. But we'll start now with the teams from last year in the HOA. And we start with MidAmerican. MidAmerican Nazarene, regular season champions. They went to the national tournament. They were a very good team. They're returning a good amount. They're returning a really, really, really good amount. I think they might have one of the better returning classes in the HOA. They went perfect in the conference. You're returning Cameron Green, who's a first-team All-American and All-Conference player, 13-6 with 2.9 rebounds. She does most of her damage in the paint, mid-range area. She only attempted 12 threes all year. So she knows where her bread and butter is. I'm very excited to see her play. We talked about the freshman of the year, Zaylee Worth, second-team All-Conference member. Low-volume three-point shooter, but still able to get buckets, 10 points a game, 6 rebounds, 3 assists. Even though it's a low volume, to still shoot an efficient 42% from the three-point line, I think that's very, very important. And then, of course, you have the Coach of the Year and Assistant Coaches of the Year. What do you like most about this MidAmerican team? Because, like I said, they're returning a good amount. They are losing Kiona Sheck, Defensive Player of the Year, first-team All-Conference. Very, very stout on that side of the ball. 13, 2 steals, 4 rebounds, two-way threat. It's going to be hard to replace her, but like I said, the returning around her, I think is going to be very, very good for this Pioneers team.
Definitely. And this is disclaimer, I apologize for Manny's pronunciation. He does not know much verbiage when it comes to pronouncing names. So anything that he butchers, I will disclaim and speak on his behalf with a nationwide apology. But I definitely do feel like this MidAmerican team is coming back with a lot. They went to the regular season championship, they took it, and they're returning what took them to that point. Their freshman of the year in Zaylee Worth, who provides 10, 7, and 3 realistically as a freshman. This team shows very much a very strong physicality front, and with that, in a physical dominant league, that is definitely a very huge factor with them. And with their Coach of the Year and their assistant coach of the year also returning, they have everything that they need. They have the blueprint to be able to do it again and again and again. And I wouldn't be shocked if that does happen.
I think their bread and butter is the defense, for sure. Like, when I have this team stats on their notes, it's all defensive stats. They held teams last year to 57 points per game. They held teams to shoot under 30%, under 39% from the field, under 30% from the three-pointer, and they forced 18 turnovers. Like, they were a defensive-first team. Offensively, I am looking at 2 specific players. Grace Carlson, 7 points, 4 rebounds, a freshman last year. Very productive for a freshman, so I'm kind of curious to see how she will have a good year this year. And Mary Luckeret, 7 points, 3.8 rebounds, but 31% from the three-point line. Very underrated. She was the 3rd best three-point shooter on the team, 4th in attempts, 4 attempts per game. I think she could have a sneaky good season offensively. Maybe not somebody, again, high on the scouting report per se, but if you'd overlook her, she can get hot, maybe ride you a little winning streak where she's a big part of the offense. I'm kind of curious to see how she does. But this team, they were the best team in the regular season last year. They were completely the favorites to win the tournament, rightfully so. They didn't do it, obviously, but like you said, they're bringing pretty much everything back. It's all coming back, and the scariest thing of a team like this is that they lost. Like, if they would have won, maybe you could see the hangover kind of happen. But when you lose in that fashion, I think it's going to be even harder for them not to win this year and go back and really try to prove that they have a chip on that shoulder and then keep going on into the national tournament. Move over now to Grandview. Grandview, another team that made it to the national tournament. The Vikings, they were great. They were great last year. They put up, they held teams to 66 points per game. They held teams under 30% from the three-point line. They held teams under 35%. They shot 35% from the three-point line. They were very good in games on both sides of the ball. I'm going to pose this question to you. Do you have an offensive question with this Grandview team? Because I feel like I do. Is that where your mind went when you started looking at this team on what's returning, what they're losing, and kind of the overarching story for them?
With what they're losing, I definitely do have a question mark. I feel like Ella Larson, Player of the Year, first team All-American, conference and defense, providing 16, 9, and 4, with shooting almost 40% from the 3-point line. That is a lot. Granted, you do have Anna Gosling, you do have Cleo Murray, you do have Ava Solsath coming back, and you have the blueprint as well to be able to be successful when it comes to the conference. But the question that sparks, and I know this is where you're going as well, is how do you make up that? How do you make up the fact that you need another 16, 9, and 4 to be able to put up with a team like MidAmerican, to be able to still maintain a conversation when it comes to the HOA? That I don't think I have an answer for that quite yet, but hopefully it does come.
And with Grandview, they were one of the teams that do have their roster out on their website, so I feel comfortable in saying this because I went, again, double-checked. Anna Gosling is on the roster, so she most likely is coming back. So is Eva Solseth. Now, Cleo Murray, she wasn't on the roster. Could be any number of reasons. Not saying she's not coming back, but that's a possibility of now you're losing 16 from Ella and 17 from Cleo. That's a big, like, again, I'm not saying that she's not going to be there. You and I obviously don't know this. We're just going off of the website. She's not on the website. She could be added in later in the year. She could not be. We don't know. But as of right now, on August 4th, when we're recording this, she's not on the website. So we got to go with what we see. This team last year averaged 76.9 points per game, That was number one in the HOA. But you know who's right behind them? That team we just mentioned in MidAmerica at 74.6. So you're the number one offense scoring-wise. And remember we talked about in the last preview with the Mid-South and Cascade, what do we say? About 60 to low 70s, you're a pretty good team.
Yeah.
Mid-70s to 80, I say you're a great offense. 80 and up, you're an elite. Like, you're touching unbelievable. They're close to that elite level. Like, you're basically a three-pointer away from being an elite offense. But now you might be losing two players that are putting up combined, is that 33 points a game almost?
Basically 35. And considering that aspect, if it is a situation where both Mary and Larson do leave, that drops you from that basically elite to, I don't even know where that would put them, especially if they don't figure it out.
Yeah, and the thing about Ella and Cleo, too, to be honest, because obviously Ella being a all-defensive team, too, you can really harp on this. The numbers are amazing. But what about the plays that don't show up on the box score? What about the possessions that don't show up in assist, in defense, on scoring? Like, that's going to be part of it, too, that they got to understand. So I'm very curious. This Grandview team, I do think, like, when we get to that second question and we kind of re-ask it and really get a direct answer, it's going to be interesting because after the four players that we just mentioned from last year's team, the next highest scorer, 4.5. Like, there was a significant drop-off, offensively speaking. I am looking, though, at Eva Solseth having a big year. She got hot she got better as the season went on. I looked at her numbers. 9 out of 10 games, she had 10-plus points to finish the season. She was completely – she had clearly gotten over that freshman wall, so to speak, and she was comfortable. She was very efficient, 42.6% from the field, almost 30% from the three-point line. She was shooting almost 6 attempts. She was shooting it on 6 attempts. She was very, very, very good. So I'm kind of looking at her maybe having a big year this year, kind of stepping into a role now. Do I think she can jump? Let's say, again, Cleo is not there because she jumped to 17. I don't know about that. But she can at least get over 10. Give me another 10-point score to go along with Anna. I think the recruiting class is going to be key. I think it's just very obvious to say that. Also, Claire Galbraith, X factor for me. 38% from the field, 4 points per game. She shot the ball only about 4 times a game, but she had 4 games where she went over 10 points. So it was there. There's a lot of these teams that we're going to look at, and that's why I kind of want to start deep diving into these more. They're flashes, glimpses, and I think this Grandview team has enough, that they saw enough. It's about development and about trusting your work. I do think that they have the potential, but they might be my biggest question from these 4 teams that we're going to talk about to start the HOA. Going on now to number 3, Missouri Valley. This Missouri Valley team, the Vikings, I'm a little intrigued by them because, wow, these last 2 teams, it's kind of gone literally down. MidAmerican, returning a lot. Arguably the whole team.
Basically.
That's a big returning group. Grandview, you're on the line. You're on the line between great, good, and workable.
Struggling.
Yeah. Missouri Valley, I feel like it's pretty safe to say you're losing a lot. Like, you are losing a lot. Tell the people at home how much they are losing, because this team, this Vikings team, not the last, but this Viking team, they might be one of those teams that we look at could make a little bit of a step back this year.
First off, they're losing first team all conference and first team all defense in Gia Moore. Gia was putting basically 15, 5, and 4 with 2 steals. Also shooting 42% from the field and 34 from the 3, averaging basically about 34 minutes a game, basically the whole game.
Pretty much.
That's a very big piece.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because that's such a big part that a lot of people may not understand. The conditioning that she's like, that's huge. That's huge.
Definitely. They're also losing a Lenia Exposito with 14, 5, and 3, second team all conference. Another one that's basically playing the entire game with 30 minutes per, along with a 31% 3-point percentage. Very big when it comes to being able to space the floor alongside Jim Moore and the rest of that starting crew. You're going to be missing a lot with that factor as well. And lastly, at least for right now, the last person who is reported losing is Rajon Callahan with a 9.2 points and 5 rebounds. If you do the math, that's basically 50 points averaging out almost, like 45, 50, with a little under 13 boards and a very huge defensive chunk. My question is, and this is a question I don't have an answer for, is who's making that up?
And for me, out of everything you just said, out of all the scoring and the rebounds and all that stuff, my biggest thing is the minutes. Because you can go out and recruit a great scorer, just a professional bucket getter. But
are they going to get buckets for 34 minutes like Gia Moore was?
Are they going to get buckets for pretty much 3 quarters? Like 3 quarters minimum. Like that's non-negotiable. That's non-negotiable. So that's my biggest takeaway from this. They were a capable team. They had some early season wins. They beat CMU 72-63 at Central Methodist. They beat Clarke 71-60. Both of them are on the road. This Missouri Valley team had some moments. And honestly, I think the way that their season ended was telling of their season as a whole. They ended the season in an overtime loss against Mount Mercy in the quarterfinals of the HOA. They had so many games like that where they could have pulled off a big upset or had big wins potentially in their hands, and they just fell short. I feel like that was the overarching theme for them all year. So I'm looking now at a Ricarda Scott, 12 points, 4 rebounds, and assist per game. Second team all conference, Sarah Ortiz, 7 points, 8 rebounds. I think she could have a great jump because those numbers are great. Now you get possibly more minutes, more touches, more opportunity. You could maybe get a double-double pretty much because you're pretty much flirting with it on the regular anyways. You're losing 7. You had 7 losses, right? 4 of them came under 9 points, which again goes back to my point. Yeah, you were there in a lot of games. Like they were not the losses you had were not blowouts typically, which
for sure
3 possessions. Anything under 10 points, I like to think of it like this: if you lose a game, to me it's about possessions. If you lose a game by 1 possession, 2 points, 3 points, even 4 points, 5 even, like those type of games, it's a 1-2 possession game. That just means that a bounce here, a call there,
a misstep there,
you know
a turnover
like
here.
Those anything 5 and under, I consider that a close game. 6 to 8, 6 to 9, that's those. Okay, you probably had multiple hiccups, defensive mistakes, not finishing your plays, transition was maybe not that great. I'm not even talking about the referees and all that kind of stuff. I'm talking about like you specific, like stuff that you controlled.
And that's understandable because they have 17 turnovers a game.
And so you can see that being a reason for those losses. 10 and up, you got outplayed. Fair enough. It wasn't your night, it is what it is. But if you're having 7 losses and 4 of them are under 9 points, and I'm talking about, and I said I was being general. There were some that were like 2 possession games. Like it wasn't that they were losing by just 9 points. They were losing by 7, 6, stuff like that. The recruiting class is going to be the biggest thing for me. Like you said, I don't know where they're going to get a lot of these points from, a lot of these minutes from, because, again, another team that's losing two-way ability. We're not just talking about the offense. We're talking about both sides of the ball here. So I'm very curious what this Missouri Valley team does. Can they build off of last year's experience with the close games? Maybe. That's a possibility. But they're a team I'm going to be keeping an eye on for this HOA conference. And then we move over to the actual tournament champions in Benedictine. The Ravens, similar to Missouri Valley. Again, we're kind of going, like, the top 4 teams, they're going backwards as you get lower. Because Benedictine, they may be losing pretty much the same thing that Missouri Valley is losing. Like, I don't think, I'll talk about the returning, and you can talk about what they're losing. They're returning Riley Bergman, 7 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists a game. Nicole Strock, 6 points, 4 rebounds, almost 6 and 5. It's nice. It's solid. A good foundational piece. You put up 73 points per game last year. And actually, before I go too far past Missouri Valley, just for the record, they were the 3rd best team in the conference in defensive points. They only allowed 61.9 points per game. So they're a great defensive team. So if you can build off of that, that's a possibility there, and I like that. That's my last kind of note on Missouri Valley. Benedictine, another team, recruiting class, and what can you feel? How can you fill those offensive holes? Because, and I'll give it to you on this question. Who has the bigger shoes to fill or the bigger holes to fill in their boat? Missouri Valley or Benedictine?
Definitely Benedictine, as they are returning champs. Hopefully trying to, regain the title again. They're losing just about 35 points per game as well, with a Lauren Dubbert stepping away with 14, 6, and 4. First team all conference and first team all defense. They're also losing Josie Wishar with 13 and 6, first team all conference, as well as Jennifer Jacob with 10 and 6 as well, second team all conference. That is a lot. Jennifer Jacob going for almost 52% from the field, very consistent, very stellar. And you also have Josie shooting almost 37 from the 3, which is a very clear testament as to why she made first team all conference. Missing those factors, as well as winning the chip when the odds weren't necessarily in your favor, that does cause a lot of question as to how you're going to return and uphold that title.
And like you said, you're losing about 37 points for the players that we mentioned. You're losing your top 4 scorers combined 46 points. Another X factor for me, another freshman. In my opinion, there's a lot of freshmen in this conference, like across the board, that might need to step up next year. For Benedictine and for me, it's Carmen Morales. 30 games played last year, 14 minutes per game. So again, that's pretty good numbers for a freshman in your first year.
Definitely.
4 points, 4 rebounds, 46% from the field, 44.4% from 3, only 9 attempts though, and 38.9% from the free throw line. I'm going to need more. Granted, she didn't take that many attempts. She only averaged about 2 per game, and I'm talking about as in his 1.8. So maybe she gets more attempts, she'll be able to make more of those, but I do think that need those free throws to go up. She had 4 games with 10-plus points, and 10 times last season, she shot the ball 5 or more times, which tells me, and I'm big on, especially, but then none of them in the last 10 games, for the record. I'm big on field goal attempts because that's a better barometer, for me at least, on how aggressive you are. I don't know how many people out there heard of I think it was Deion Waiters that said it. I'd rather go 0 for 20 than 0 for 10. Now, every coach out there probably just, their heart skipped a beat. I don't think he was being literal, and neither am I. No one should ever go 0 for 20. At some point, let's not shoot the ball anymore. But the premise is your confidence never wavered. And that's the message there. If she's getting these shots up consistently almost over 10 times a game, 10 times last year, it means you're pretty consistent. That means the team is finding you, that you're in the flow of the offense, in that type of offense, you're able to get opportunities. So I'm looking at Morales to maybe take another leap up. Instead of 4 points, give me close to 10. I don't even think 10 is like the goal. If I'm 8 to 9, got to figure out ways to get that. And again, that's your average. So there might be some games where you have more and you could get 15 even. You might have a great game like that. That's cool. But I do think another recruiting class is going to be key. I think these last 2 teams that we talked about, the recruiting class is the name of the game. And that's not to say that they can't do it from in-house. They can. They maybe can. But it's going to be a lot harder because both teams we just mentioned, for us at least, going off of the stats and the roster and all that kind of stuff, two returners that really had substantial impact on your offense last year. That's the biggest thing we're talking about. It's offense. It's going to be hard to replace that stuff. Like,
Sure.
defensively, we talk about all the time. It's effort. It's a want. It's a desire to be a good defender and a good defensive team. Offensively, you can want to be a good defensive team all you want. You still got to get through learning the system, learning the sets,
Hours in the gym.
You got to get comfortable, in that offense to score. You got to comfortable with your teammates. There's just so much more, I feel like, on offense to try and fix on a quicker turnaround. So I do think these two teams, the Vikings and Ravens respectively, it's going to be a tough season for them because of what they're losing, and I'm looking at the recruiting class being the biggest thing for them. On a note, and I know we neither one of us touched on this, so I wanted to talk about it real quick. Offensive rebounds. This conference as a whole, especially moving forward, you're going to see the rebounding was crazy. Like, these teams are grabbing offensive rebounds like they're going out of style. Missouri Valley and Benedictine, two teams that we mentioned, they are going to be losing a lot of offense. They average both 14 offensive rebounds a game. And in Missouri Valley's case, I could round it up to 15 at 14.5. So if that's where most of your offense is coming from, it makes me a little bit more hesitant on saying could be a tough year, because those are hustle points, second chance opportunities. You're putting pressure on you're getting more possessions than your opponents. So if that's where your offense is coming from, we can work with that. You got to go out there and get hustle players. You got to go out there and get dirty work players. That's a lot easier to do as opposed to trying to go find a polished scorer. I see the face you're making. Do you not agree with the take?
I agree with the logic behind it, but I will say that.
And mind you, this is coming from somebody who was that. Like, that was his like.
Oh yeah.
One of his one of his jobs when we played. He was getting second chance points, opportunities for all of us.
I don't see it impacting much of a difference when it comes offensively. Like, if you're losing the rebounding, 9 times out of 10, when you look at stats wise for rebounding in general, 40% on average, and you can back check me if you want, 40 to 30% of rebounding in a general sense comes offensively. So with Missouri Valley, for example, losing 5, basically 20 boards, at least for right now. Considering the facts, that's taking away 5, 6, maybe even 7 of the offensive boards just by itself. How can you? I'm not saying it's impossible, but how can it be caught back up? Like, how can you recover from that so comfortably in a year? Is it impossible? No. Would I like to see it? Definitely. But do I think it's realistic? Not this year.
And on this note, and then we'll continue. Pulled it up here. Give you one guess. I need both answers. Who do you think were the top 2 teams last year in the HOA in offensive rebounds?
Missouri Valley
and Benedictine. Like, it's right there. 2 of the top 4 teams that were in offensive. 2 of the top 4 teams in the conference were the 2 best teams in offensive rebounds. It's that I think is going to be the big. That might be, for me, that might be the indicator of how their year goes. If they keep that above, maybe not 14, because like I said, 14's a lot. 14's a lot. And you're losing.
Keep it above 10.
I was about to say, if you can keep it above 10, I think you at least make the playoffs again. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think you're comfortably in the playoffs. But that might be the stat for me for them to see how the season goes. But to recap, we touched on all 4 teams for question 2. What is more likely to happen in your case? Benedictine and Missouri Valley taking a step back, or Grandview and MidAmerica staying on top? What's your direct answer to that question? Do you think 3 and 4 take a step back? And by step back, I mean you are now bottom of the playoff picture, not necessarily missing the playoffs, but you're bottom of the playoffs? Or do you think 1 and 2 stay at 1 and 2? Either order, but 1 and 2 stay up there.
I'm more comfortable going 3 and 4 drop than 1 and 2 staying. I feel like the only reason why I'm not comfortable saying 1 and 2 stay is because I don't know what Grandview is looking like. That is if I'm just going based off the question, that's it.
That like, is if literally where I was going. If
Grandview can come back and recover from what they're losing, then I will 100% bet my bottom dollar that 1 and 2 stay not really where they're at, but they stay at 1 and 2. But because Grandview is such a question mark right now,
Especially now with us finding
I
out about Cleo, I think
precisely, and
if you take them out and it's just MidAmerican and then I think we would both say MidAmerican staying on
oh
top.
yeah, for sure,
Versus like you said, Grandview being iffy, not that iffy, but like literally 50-50, but because of what they could be losing, I agree fully. Like I think it's gonna be
for sure.
Benedictine taking maybe a step back. But then that brings us to the final question, which would kind of segue the rest of these teams in the conference. Who from 9 through 13 will join 5 through 8? Who comes out? And then who from 5 through 8 will join 1 through 4? We'll start with 9 through 13 since that's the first part of the question. So we'll jump over to the back end of the conference, the 4 teams that didn't make it last year. We'll start with Baker. The Wildcats last year just missed the postseason by a game. And I mean a game because literally the 8 seed, which I believe was Clarke, yes, it was Clarke, they literally won their last game of the season to clinch the 8 seed. So, like, it was that close between them and Baker. Baker could have been the 8 seed very easily. They even ended the season on a 3-game winning streak to close it out. Like, they did everything that they could, just wasn't in the cards for them. I'll let you talk about, like, a lot of the players from what they're losing and what they're returning. For me, the entire season, 66.5 points per game. Not the best, not horrible either. You shot the ball 40% from the field, 29 from 3. Might want to get that over 30% if you can. Another team, offensive rebounds, 11.6. That was good for 11th in the conference. Similar to what we talked about with Cascade. Remember what we said in the Cascade when it came to three-point shooting? Teams that are shooting like mid-30s, you're at the bottom of the team. Like, you're at the bottom middle of the pack. 11 offensive rebounds. There's some conferences and some coaches out there that are like, I'll take that. Like, I want that. For the record, that is very, very, very good. Like, I don't understand where that is. And apologies. That's opponents' offensive rebounds. That's opponents' offensive rebounds. My bad. The offensive rebounds for Baker was 8, which honestly, even more to my point. If you're gonna be a team in this conference, you got to be able to fight every night. To get in the playoffs, you got to be at least 10. At least 10. Like, that's the cutoff.
For sure.
Because the top 7 all made the postseason. Not Graceland. Culver, Peru State, MidAmerican, Park, Benedictine, Missouri Valley. Those were the 7. Out of those 7, only 2 of them didn't make it. Peru State and Graceland. The other 5 all made it. That's a big part of the team and of the conference. You have to be able to, keep your opponents as low on offensive rebounds as possible, and then you got to get second chance points as well. What hurt Baker, I feel like, was not the end of the year. It was the beginning of the year. You know, you started the season just on a bad streak. Can you avoid that? That's really what it comes down to. Because 12-game losing streak to start the year, it's going to be hard to fight out of that. It's going to be hard to fight out of that because you start the year 1-12. 11 of those losses were conference games. There's nothing like you can't. The fact that you even got within a game to get in the postseason, very impressive. Very impressive. So it proves to me that this team can win games and be in the hunt. Can you avoid the rough start? Can you avoid the rough start? And I think that's a perfect segue into your piece of this with, you know, what they're losing, what they're bringing back, because they're losing a lot. So you might be trying to avoid another rough start again next year.
Baker is returning to IITs with 9 points, almost 50% from the field, 3 rebounds, and 3 assists. They're also returning Ariana Blanchard with a very solid 7.4 boards, and a team that really harped on that. But you got to take into account who they are losing. They're losing Alyssa Morris, third team out conference, 15.5, basically 16, with 33% from 3, as well as 6 boards. They're also losing a Sophia Barrett, second team all conference and second team all defense, with 15.5, basically 16, 50% from the field, 6 boards, 2 assists, and 2 steals, as well as Destiny Keener with 13 points, 45% from the field, with basically 4 boards and 3 assists with a team that already has a lot of area of opportunity, less than 30% from 3, pushing 16 turnovers a game. They allow 42% field goal wise. It's a big piece that is being taken away from them. And I already know you have your X factor and you have, your potentials, but I'm stuck with this team, honestly. Like, I don't see a reality this year unless this recruiting class comes in and they get the Monday sisters or something of that aspect. But I just don't see a reality where this year they can, fill in that gap so easily.
My X factor is the team because they are that seesaw-y. Making up words out here. Great podcasting. I told you they started.
Fantastic.
I told you they started the year 1-12, right? It's 13 games. Those are your first 13 games of the season. You want to know the last 13 games of the year? They went 8-5, including that 3-game winning streak. You know what team they beat in that winning streak at one point? Benedictine, who ended up winning the conference. They beat them 81-73. They also beat Clarke and Culver-Stockton. Like, this team, I know for a fact at the end of the year they were so just they were mad, not so much at not making the playoffs, but because they knew that if they started better, they make it. They probably do make it. Because I do think they got hot at the right time. One game, 40 minutes. That's all like the difference in that. And it's tough when your season comes to an end like that. But that's why the team is my X factor. If you can avoid a rough start, you will put yourself. I'm not gonna say you're gonna make the playoffs because again, you're losing a lot and you're losing both your all-conference members.
In a very tough conference.
In a very tough conference. So I'm not going out as far as that to say, but they are there. It's there. I just want to see, did you learn from last year, or could we be in? And I'm not even saying because 1-12, like go 500. You can go below instead of going 1-12. Give me 5-8. Like, give me that. It's a lot different. Like, every game matters, especially at the beginning of the year. Like we mentioned, when you have three conference games in the fall, when you're getting everybody back and trying to get in the swing of things, you probably only have 2 or 3 non-conference games if you're lucky to get ready for your conference games. So you gotta take advantage of those and kind of come out ready to go. Few key games for them with their schedule being out on the website. They're at McPherson, from the KCAC. They also are playing against Ottawa, and then their conference opener is against Mount Mercy. I think that's a good test for them early on, a team that didn't make the postseason last year and a team that could be back in there this year. So those are my 3 games. And again, most of my key games are going to be at the beginning of the year because by the end of the year, like I said, they're all conference games. Like, you're not going to be too many non-conference games in there, and they're typically not anything crazy just because coaches are trying to obviously save themselves and save their players. So a lot of my early games are going to be the key games to watch. This Baker team is going to be a very interesting team for me because of what they can be. I see the potential. Can they live up to that potential is the question. We go from the Wildcats to the Eagles, now Central Methodist. Tennessee last year, balanced, I think, in the returning department. You're returning Nautica Washington, 13 all-conference member, Samaya Stevens. In Washington's case, 12 points, 44% from the field, 36% from 3 on about 3 attempts a game, 80% from the field. Efficient. Looking at a first-team all-conference season for her. I think that should be her goal. The year or the month that I think really hurt this Eagles team was the month of December. You beat Baker by only 4 points, but then you lose to Clarke by 1, you lose to Park by 5, and then you lose to Peru. Another team that late game execution, late game situations seem to be kind of where you got to get over the hump.
Definitely.
So is that also where you're going at? Because while I said that they're returning a good amount, there's still some holes that they need to fill from the team from the players that are leaving possibly for next year.
Well, for sure. With them losing Sheree Trotter with Penn in 4, almost 50% from the field, and Kalia Adams, 9.4 points with 43%. It does even out with who they are returning with Washington and Stevens because it just allows for them to have a step up, allow for them to really step into the role and have a better season than they did last year. What I am learning is the HOA, even though they're a very physical, confident team, I have hesitation with betting my bottom dollar on any team in crunch time. I feel like with the HOA, they're so physical and they're so dominant when it comes to physicality that when it comes to closing out games, physicality leads to sloppiness.
Wear and tear.
And with
I like
that,
that point.
it definitely does leave a lot of question as to who really can come out on top. Because if that's the case, then it's just as 50-50 as the other conferences that were basically all even out. It really just depends on the last 5 minutes of the game.
And I think that's a really good point that I didn't think about, because for in Central Methodist's case, a team similar to the Wildcats, 67.6 points per game. Your opponents 70.6 points per game. 3-point percentage, they were shooting about 27. Your opponent shooting about 31. Offensive rebounds for your opponents, 11.7. You're giving them opportunities. You are losing the rebounding battles. Every team moving forward, for the most part, I believe, was losing the rebound battle. In Baker's case, by 4. In the Eagles' case, by 2. That's going to be hard to overcome in a conference where rebounding is the name of the game. You need to be able to be a physical team on the glass. My point, 11 games in conference this year for the Eagles were decided by under 10 points. 10 points, 9 points, that's my cutoff. There were 2-9 of those games. That is the game. Like that, those are the games that you're talking about where experience in the clutch, in the late game, winning time. I think ESPN considers winning time like the last 5 minutes of a game that's 5 points or less. They were
Something like that.
They were in most of those games. So we look at that in crunch time, you were not able to be even 500. 2-9, similar to where I talk about with a Baker team, 1-12. Like you just can't have that lopsided. It's got to be even. It's got to be even to be able to try and get into the postseason in the HOA. They're also 4-10 on the road. Need you to be better on the road. Like it's really what it comes down to. These two teams, to sum them up, it's about, did your experiences last year, when you could see the postseason, you could taste it, did they turn into lessons for you going into this year from the players' standpoint? I'm not even talking about. I'm talking about the players, not the coaches. The players. Did you learn from that, or are you going to have history repeat itself? The age-old saying: if you don't learn from history, you are doomed to repeat it. And that applies for the recruiting class, because
definitely
not just the freshmen, but just because you're an incoming transfer who's been playing college basketball for a while, this is a new team. You need to still get adjusted to that. The upperclassmen that are going to be on the team now, y'all got to be the ones telling them and teaching them, like, hey, this is what happened last year. We're not letting it happen again. We're going to be better in these late game situations, in these moments. Or altogether, let's not even be in them. Let's put them away early. Let's put our foot on the gas, no breaks, and put them away in the first half, in the first 3 quarters. So in the fourth quarter, we don't got to worry about it. Because you know how it is. You give a team momentum into the fourth quarter, that's all that happens. And I just talk about that a lot of times with these teams. So both these teams, the Wildcats and the Eagles, very capable of getting in there. And again, we'll re-ask the question later to give a more direct answer. But I feel like late game execution is going to be my biggest thing for them. Yellow Jackets, Graceland, your turn. Pretty good returning class, I think. You have more returning, in my opinion, than losing. I have right here, they're a balanced offense with a deep rotation. I like their offense. Granted, it wasn't anything crazy, 63 points per game. I just like the fact that there's nobody that went like over 15, I think it was. I think maybe 12 was like the highest. You started the season 2-0 by an average margin, by a total of 30-point differential. And combining both games that they won by a combined 30 points. You can't follow that up with an 11-game losing streak. You just can't do that. You can't do that. 4 of those games, under 10 points. We're seeing a constant theme here with a lot of these middle-of-the-pack teams that just missed out on that A seed. And when we get to Clarke, you're going to see they closed out a lot of those games. So what is your take on this Graceland team? Because I might have a better spin on it. But I'm curious to see what your take is for this Yellow Jackets crew.
Granted, I'm not sure if injuries played a part in it or any sort of undefiable factor, inevitable, better the word would be. Um, but Graceland is returning Kimani Freeman with 11.4 and 4 boards. They're returning a Maxine and Pofo with 10 and 7, basically a double double. If you put in a little more of that elbow grease, and then you have a Natiania Russell with 8, 5, and 4, basically steals. Let's round that up for her.
Mm-hmm.
But you are also losing Avery Walker Henry with 8.2 and Camila Moreno with 8 and 2 steals as well. As I like the team, honestly. I like the fact that any given night you can look out across your bench and you can say, go out and help us take the dub. It doesn't have to be just one person. You can realistically go across your bench and draw straws and say, tonight's your night. Step up and, give us the plate to win. Or somebody else will do it right behind you. They don't have to depend on one person to solely run their offense. But, and this is the big but, that can also hurt them. And the angle I'm going at is with them not having the person to kind of, help ringlead the situation. It's a lot of scrambling, and that does go into them allowing basically 13 offensive boards and their turnovers being so high, as well as their low 3-point percentage in 26.2. It all plays a factor as to what they do produce on the floor. And depending on their recruiting class and who comes in, I definitely do see that this Graceland team has the potential to definitely step up and get out of those double digits when it comes to rankings.
On paper, this team, there's nothing of this team on paper really stands out.
Yeah.
You were scoring 63 points per game. You were allowing 73 points per game. You were shooting under 27% from the three-point line, under 70% from the free throw line. Your offensive rebound, like you mentioned, 13. You're losing the rebound battle -8. You're almost 14 turnovers a game. The only bright spot that I feel like is, again, balanced offense, 10 offensive rebounds a game. Even with all that said, something tells me, of the 3 teams we just mentioned, they're the team that I have what's what I'm looking for? The team that I have the most unrealistic hope in, because you got an 11-game losing streak to start the year after your 2-0 start. You then end the season on a 6-game losing streak. That tells me you're missing what you said, the ringleader, the experience. I think they will get that this year from their crew. I think somebody in-house steps up. I know that if you look at the 3 teams, you might say out of the 3 teams that we talked about, the possible best returning player is Washington from Central Methodist because he was an all-conference member, and understandably so. But I feel like because the bar for Graceland obviously is a little bit lower, their ability to be overlooked, their ability to build, and the motivation to do it is a little bit higher. So I'm very curious on that side, the mental side of this. Statistically, I understand it doesn't look pretty, and I get that. But there's something here that I feel like because they're returning I'd say about maybe a little bit more than the other 2 teams in the sense of number of players, maybe not talent, but the number of players. I think this Yellow Jacket team could maybe not make the playoffs, but they're going to be a team that could make someone miss it, or they could be like Baker last year where you just missed it. You were there 9, maybe 10, and it just didn't fall your way at the end of the year. But that's kind of my take on the Yellow Jackets, of them kind of under the radar. You look up, you're like, they're about 500 right now. Oh, they just picked up a nice one there. Oh, they picked up a nice one there. I'm interested to see on this Yellow Jacket team for sure. Last two teams before we get into the middle of the conference here. Peru State, the Bobcats. William Penn, the Lady Statesmen. Defense. I think we can put them together. Defense is the name of the game. For Peru, you're scoring 65, you're allowing 75. For William Penn, you're scoring 55, you're allowing 71. That's
a lot.
That's what it comes down to. Like, we can get into all of this and we can do all this stuff, and I'm sure you'll talk about, real quick on the returning for both teams, because they are returning a good amount. Like, they're both returning an all-conference member on the third team. So it's there. But I can't overlook the defense. And before I pass it over to you, I'll say this. For Peru State, 11 out of their 28 games last year, they kept teams under 75 points per game. That is what you were allowing them to shoot. So almost half, maybe not almost half, but a good amount of your games, maybe a quarter or so of your games, quarter of your games, you're allowing them, or more than half your games, you're allowing them to score over 75. You can't, that's not going to work. I saw when I was looking at the schedule, 80-point games, 79, 70, like they were scoring a lot. So
especially with us touching on the fact that if you reach 80 at a semi-consistent basis,
and on the flip side, if you're giving up almost 80, we got to work on that defense. So I think that's the biggest thing for them. And then for William Penn, for me, it's just you got to make teams uncomfortable. Teams are shooting 31% from the three-point line against you and 49%, 41.9, almost 42 from the field. You got to make teams uncomfortable. For William Penn, 2 non-conference games, and then they'll have their conference over against Benedictine, so they're starting out the gate big. But I mean, talk to people a little bit about the bright spots, because again, like I said, they are returning 2 third-team all-conference members, 1 from each team. Is there anything else that you're kind of looking at on maybe saying there's something here, but they got to be able to fix that defense first and foremost?
For Peru State, I definitely do think they have the potential. They're returning Kylie Diaz, third team all-conference, 14, 7, and 3 blocks per game. I definitely think that she does take a defensive leap going into this year, potentially putting some sort of a player of the year kind of run, and being able to be that ringleader as far as the defensive front load with this team. They're also bringing back an Arison Bonderschmidt with 11 and 6. Those two right there can be a very dominant duo as far as taking this Peru State team back into relevancy when it comes to the HOA. They are losing Haley Ingram and Natasha Deal, combined 22 points, 7 boards. That takes a lot. And to be able to have the 2 dynamic duo, I'll call them for now, take that much of a leap, it's not realistic. But then, in my perception, my question is, who else would? And for William Penn, they're losing Alyssa Harns, Jada Smith, and Asia Arrowwood combined a little over 30 points, with pushing a little under 27 boards, I would say. Again, that physicality presence, not even looking at it from an offensive defense perspective. Physicality, you can tell by their stats that they're the ones making those hustle plays. They're the ones adding extra elbow grease before the game starts and really honing in on those loose balls and offensive boards and all of those physicality plays, those make or break plays that really just determine on how physical you're being in those moments. Who can you depend on to pick up that slack? Especially going against teams like the first 5 that we mentioned. You wouldn't be able to put up a fight realistically if you can't hold yourself down in the paint with them. Who's going to be able to step up? They are returning for William Penn, Carly West, 13 all conference, 15, 40% from the field, 6 rebounds and 2 steals, and Azori Edwards with 13, 55% from the field and 5 boards. Can the returning factors combine? I think it's very unfair to ask for one of them to really step up to that plate alone, but can they combine, find the strength to not only lead their team to be a more physical dominant presence, but also lead by example by stepping up into that plate themselves? I'd like to see it.
I
I
do.
think that would be my biggest what if right now
I do
for
think
the conference.
out of all the conferences that we've looked at, and the bottom of the conferences, and we'll end on this note for this part. These two teams have maybe the two best, like the best talent wise, in the sense of both teams have a third team all conference member. Both teams are returning double digit scores to lead their returning class. I'm excited to see maybe they do take a little bit more of a leap. I do think 14 and 11 for Kylie and Arison. Maybe get to 16 for Kylie, get closer to 15 for Arison, and similar for Carly and Edwards. I'm curious for them for sure. To bring it back to the beginning of the question, 9 through 13. We haven't talked about 5 through 8 yet, but 9 through 13 specifically. Give me one team you think will be in that middle of the pack next year and basically the bottom of the conference, like a bottom of the conference tournament, I should say. Don't tell me who's coming out yet, but just give me your one team out of William Penn, Peru State, Graceland, Baker, and Central Methodist.
50-50 right now. But I'm going to flip a coin and say my team is Graceland.
Putting this on. You took mine. You little. God dang it, you took mine.
It's all right. Say it.
All right, we're going to go Graceland for argument's sake, because I don't want to go the same as you. We want to have some variety here on this show.
I'll be variety. My very close second pick was Central Methodist.
I'm between Methodist and Baker, so if you want to go Methodist, that's fine. I'll go Graceland.
I'll go Methodist.
All right, so you'll go Methodist, I'll go Graceland. Cool, awesome. So those are our picks that will make the postseason, so to speak. And again, maybe that's a little bit of a spoiler for the contenders and tier list later, but that's just one. Middle of the pack. This is where things get very interesting. Very interesting. We'll start at the top of the middle, so to speak. Mount Mercy. New coach, as we always do. Shout out to Charisse Burrell for the Mustangs. New coaching era. I'm a little scared for this team. I like them. I do like them. I think they had a really good year.
I'm scared. I'll just say it. I really am.
I have it on my notes, and I'm curious if you have these two words in your mind. Do you think they have the biggest hit in terms of what they're losing? Of everybody?
100%.
It's scary because last year you were a 70-point per game team, 15 assists. You know me. If you're having pretty high assist numbers, that means the ball's flowing around, it's moving,
Exactly.
It's good continuity. So that's a lot to ask for. You're losing 4 all-conference members. 4 all-conference members, to me, that's a lot. Like, I can't overlook that. You're losing not just 4, but you're also losing 3 of them that shot 38.8, 35.5, and 30.3% from the three-point line. Scoring-wise, I can't even, that's a lot of math for me to do right now, but round it, we're thinking about 15, 12, that's 27, 12, that's 39, almost 40 points a game, almost 50. This team, I just think it's hard to not address the elephant in the room on top of a new coach. So it's hard for me not to address the elephant in the room of the scoring. I do have an X factor. I'll wait for that at the end. Talk to me about your takes for this and really deep dive on the 4 players that we're talking about being the leaving possibly for this Mount Mercy team.
I'm scared. I really am. All 4, all conference, all 4, 30% plus from the 3. Front leading, you have Claudia Vanzant 15.4 with basically 10 double-double first team all conference. You have Annika Headington, 12, 6, and 4, second team all conference. Allie Marfield, 12 and 5, third team all conference. Madison Skelton, 9 and 4, third team all conference. Very huge impact as far as their presence on the court. You can automatically feel with any one of these players once they step out off the court to take a breath, the flow of the game isn't running the same. And now you have to live with the fact that they won't be back next year. So to say, it's too big of a chunk you have to make up.
And kind of what you
So,
said with the assists, like that's part of it. Like the
for
flow is the
sure,
word. 4 assists, 5 assists, 4 assists. That's can do. That's 4, 5, 9, 4, almost 13 out of the 15. Like 13 assists that these three of these players were averaging. Your team is averaging 15. So like there's just too much correlation for us not to be like that's a big hit. I guess it's gonna be a big hit.
exactly. It's it's scary because they have to rely very heavily on who they bring in, and that's one of the scariest things as a team going into a new season, finding somebody new to rely on, and 9 times out of 10 in situations like this, they don't rely on. They have as of right now, rely on who they can bring in to help lead that group back into a place of relevancy. And with a conference and with a league that is so physical heavy, like we've been touching on all day, it's very scary to see who can possibly come into this Mount Mercy team and provide that offer. I'm excited, but
I have three X factors, but before I get into that, this team lost 12 games last year. 7 of them less than 10 points. We see a theme here with a lot of these teams. I keep saying it. The HOA is in so many games with each other, let alone teams outside the conference. So you have to be able to execute down the stretch of these games. Sam Keel, 8 points per game last year. Sadie Searchin, 40.5% from a 3-point line on about 4 attempts per game. Not a lot of attempts, but she had 7 games last year with 10-plus points, including 20 in the season opener. She's someone I'm keeping an eye on. Obviously losing a lot of scoring. Could she be someone that could fill some of that load and deal with some of that load, especially being a floor spacer? I like it. I could see it possibly happening. For Sam, 34.9% from a 3-point line on 5 attempts per game. Again, someone that's a floor spacer. Can you bring defenses out, create driving lanes, create situations where you are putting the defense in disadvantaged opportunities and advantage opportunities for your offense with your shooting ability? Very interested on seeing what she can do. The last X factor that I have, Isabella Walshiger, 5 games, 10-plus points, but only 1 in 2025. So when the calendar year turned, she was not as aggressive or was not as efficient, maybe is a better way to put it. But she played 24 minutes a game, 5 field goal attempts on 41% for the year, 2.3 on 3-point percentage, 34.8 for the year. Isabel, Sam, and Sadie, I'm looking at you three being possibly not what Claudia, Anika, Mally, and Madison were individually, but as a collective, I could see them stepping into their role. The last point I'll talk about before I talk about the 3 teams that they're 3 games that I have kind of circled for them. The rebounding is important because we keep talking about it for everybody in the conference. Another team giving up too many offensive rebounds to your opponents. But offensive rebounds also matter. They're the best time to shoot threes. So if you have a Sadie, a Sam, and an Isabella that are comfortable now, a little bit, a season under their belt and all that kind of stuff, I get a rebound if I can't go up and kicking it out to my shooters. That's the best time to do that. So that's why I feel like there's something brewing with this Mount Mercy team. under or over all of this, I should say, is obviously, like you said, a new coach. So this Mount Mercy team could be completely different. Be a completely different team. It could be a whole new regime in the sense of what they do, what they emphasize, all that kind of stuff. So there's also that underlying element about it as well. I'm excited to see what they do. For my 3 games to keep an eye on, Bethel from the Mid-South on
That's a
October
big one.
25th. That is the second. That is 2 days after opening day. For those that don't know, opening day is the 23rd of October this year. Then you've got Bellevue, a team from the Frontier Conference that I think is very good, very solid. And then your first conference game is at Baker. I need that to be a win for me to be more confident in their team. Because if you told me right now today which one of those teams should be the one, obviously I think we're both going to go Mount Mercy. But both teams, I could also see that game going in Baker's favor. It's at Baker. There's a lot of things going on for both teams.
Honestly, speak for yourself. I'm scared.
I think
I really am.
This team is going to be interesting because of new coach, can players step up, and then what they bring on the recruiting class for sure. Now going to the 6th seed, Park Pirates. The Park team's from Missouri. This is the Park team from Missouri, not from the Park team in the GSAC. They are an interesting bunch as well. This team, and I'll save all these notes after you say your piece because a lot of this stuff is actually going to be, could counter what you're going to say or could back it up, so I'm kind of going to hold off on it. Talk to me about what they're losing, because they are losing a lot. They are losing a good amount. But they're also returning a lot, and there could be someone that could maybe take a step up. What I'll say is this. Almost all their stats were even with their opponents.
And I don't like that.
And I knew you weren't going to like that. I knew you weren't. For me, me and Lex are, and this is one of the reasons, again, I wanted to have him be my co-host, because we're the same, but we're different. He looks at that and doesn't like it. I look at that and I'm more, I think it's safe to say, of the two of us, I'm the more positive one. He's the more realistic, negative. What do you want to talk about? He's that version.
Crazy word.
I'm a good cop. He's a bad cop. It is what it is. It is what it is. I look at that. I'm like, all right. I mean, you're there. Just got to take a couple steps. You're looking at it like you're there. I don't like y'all being so close. So talk to me a little bit about why you don't like the fact that they're a little closer than they should be.
It's literally contradicting. Like, why are you going to give somebody cake and then have it taken from you? Nobody's eating. Like, what are we doing? I can definitely note the fact that Adaya Cooper, second team all conference, 14-4, 70% from the line, and Nevaeh Spillman, 7-4 with 41% from the field. No threes though. I think that returning core can definitely help this Park team come out on more of a solid position into the conference. They're losing Emma Perry, second team all conference, Michaela Artis, third team all conference, and Paige Scott. Combined, 30 points, a little under 20 boards. A lot. On top of the fact that you are literally giving your cake and getting it eaten too. I'm scared. And it's just, and it really aggravates me that it gets kind of even here, because then this just comes into a factor that if it's so even, then every game you lose because you can't close it out.
And we go back to what we talked about earlier about late games and the HOA being a almost regular thing, honestly.
Precisely.
No matter who you play against. For the two players you talked about, Nadia and Naive. Nadia, only 8 games this year were under 10 points. For reference, the last 7 games of the season, she had over 10 points a game. So she was cooking at the end of the year. Mm-hmm. Perfect. A big reason that they made the postseason and were able to get in kind of comfortably. For Spillman, she got better as the year went on. She got better as the season progressed. She was somebody that 6 out of 12 games to end the year were 10-plus scoring games. So you're returning 2 really, really solid players for this Park team. But the reason I'm kind of high on them too is this team is coming off, I'm about to rattle off a lot of these things. Team is coming off one of the best seasons record-wise, 17-10. I believe it's their best. I could be wrong, but I believe it's their best under their head coach Norman Cooper Jr. Best record in the time that he's been there. I believe it's only been 3 years since he's been there. No, I lied. 10 years. I don't know where I got 3 from. I think it's like north of 10 years, if I remember correctly from looking at their website. They had the highest points per game since 2001, 2022. Website only goes back that far. I did do some deep dive, and it was even going farther back in like the teens of the 2010s. I'm not going to say that because I couldn't really verify that on their website, but the website does go back to 21, 22. So, I mean, that's still a 4-year gap. So that's a lot to say for you to be the highest scoring. Now, granted, the highest scoring is not saying a lot considering 63.7 points per game, but you're growing. That's all that matters here. That's what I'm talking about. And you had your first HOA conference postseason appearance since you joined in 2021, like in 2021. There's just too much positiveness going on for me not to be like, I'm here. Let's do this. Let's rock with this Pirates crew. I really think that they could be a team this year that last year made it to the quarterfinals. Like they could do that again and maybe sneak into the semis. Am I going as far as saying the HOA conference tournament? I'm not drinking that much Kool-Aid now. But this Pirates team, what do Pirates known for? They're known for patrolling the seas and robbing people blind. I believe they could rob people blind of some wins this year. I think they could be, give me a 68 point per game offense. Keep the defense where it is because 67 is not bad. I know for a fact you can agree 67 looks bad because of the 63. Don't tell me 67 looks bad because of the 67. 67 looks bad because you have 63 points per game on the offensive side of the ball. If they were at 68, 69, or even 70, I think you'd be a little bit more higher on them. Don't lie to me now.
If they're at 68, 69, pushing 70,
You'd be a little more inclined.
No, but listen to me. And I need you to say this, look dead in the camera, and be completely honest. If they're at 68 to 70 points per game, how much are they allowing?
No, the same thing. I'm saying
it won't be the same thing.
What do you mean it won't be the same? I get our first bet of the year. Someone write it down. Park Pirates from the HOA will hold the team to their opponents to at least 67 or lower points per game this year. No matter what the offense is, but we're talking about their defense. I think they can do that again. Because defense is a lot easier to replicate than offense. Because you can't always.
Now with them losing so much.
Fair. I get that. I understand that. But I think that they can do it. I'm dying on that hill. I'm big on this Park team. I really am.
I'm glad you're dying on that hill. Your tombstone will be prepared for you.
And for the record, given the William Woods came in from the AMC, Park was also in the AMC previously, and their last postseason appearance period was in 15-16 in the AMC. So it's been a while since they've been here. I think this was a turning around year. I think last year was a turning point. I think this year they will really, 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 really make some serious noise. A sleeper team. Do not fall short on this Pirates team. That's all I'm going to say. The 3 games I have for them, they opened the season against Stevens College, a very good team that we haven't gotten to yet in conference tournament, in conference previews yet, but they're a very good team. And then their conference opener is against Baker. Can we both agree that they should win that game at least? Today, again, August 4th. Don't tell me that you're thinking
on August 4th, 2025, at whatever time you watch this, I will say that the Park Baker game will go down the last 2 minutes.
We're gonna revisit this in that when that game happens. Just so you know.
Again, I do have a historical past of being correct.
I think we're gonna have to start adopting Stephen A's. This is fluid. It's fluid. It's ever changing. I think we're gonna have to start adopting it. I think we're gonna have to start adopting it and put our own spin to it. Last 2 teams here before we get to our tiers list and we finish the final part of the question. Culver State, Clarke, Wildcats, the Pride. Excuse me. These were the 2 teams I had the most information on, like aside from the notes that you and I shared when I went back in and looked at some stuff. I can confirm from the roster that is on Culver-Stockton's website, the 3 players that you and I have on the returning are confirmed to still be on the roster. This Culver, I feel like the way I am with Park, might be the way you are with Culver or Clarke. One of these two teams. I think one of these two teams are like your teams. I don't know why, but for that reason, I'm gonna go first, and then you can talk about it.
Me and Clarke go like this.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. The biggest thing for me, another team, late game execution. That is their biggest hindrance. You gave up a fourth quarter lead to Clarke, funny enough, on December 3rd. Clarke had 29 points in the fourth quarter alone. You can't win games like that.
That's a lot.
You can't win games like that. You fell short in the conference opener versus Peru State in a game that had 19 lead changes and 16 ties. Granted, great game for Peru, but you can't drop those type of games in the HOA. You have to be able to handle business when you can. The team started in that game, and I'll pass it on to you, and I'll wrap it up at the end. The team started 9-2 in the fourth quarter. They went scoreless in the final 2 minutes and 23 seconds of that game. It can't happen. It cannot happen. Those two things are what I'm gonna kind of lead up with for you, kind of set you up to talk about this Culver team, because again, they are returning a lot. They're losing a key player that I'm sure you're going to touch on. The scoring last year, 67 points per game. Offensive rebounds, about 10 a game. They are an HOA team. Like, they're an HOA team when you look at them on paper. What do you see deeper for this team in terms of what they're coming back? Because they are coming back with a good amount of offense and of personnel and stat and skill.
Bringing back every outing, second team all conference, 15 points, 5.2 boards, 3 steals, with right under 40 from the 3. Very solid as far as leading into your senior season. You also have Missouri, Nambara, third team all conference with 12.3 points, a little over 32 per game from the 3, and pushing 2 steals as well. And an Ellie Bentley with 8 points. That right there is a strong core that you need to come back into a very competitive HOA season. And that core can very much make or break their season depending on how they mesh and how they lead. If they come out guns blazing, the physicality, I definitely do see them causing an uproar, similar to how you view Park. I definitely do see this Culver-Stockton team upsetting some people, even though they are losing Katie Webb, second team all conference with 13-6 and a very good shooting split. I see an upside with this team, not as much as a downside. And you'll kind of go into the more of the team stats and talk about what they're missing, but I see a positive leap for this team going into the year, more so than a negative.
I can see that for sure. Like, I understand where. And another player I did want to mention that might not be there, again, not on the roster, Addison Newbon, 11 points per game last year, 54% from the field, 41 from 3, 4 rebounds a game. Between her and Katie Webb, you're losing about 24 points and 10 rebounds, almost 11 rebounds per game. And again, in a conference, rebound is a premium. We gave, so the Cascade, we gave them a make or miss conference. We gave the Mid-South the penitentiary.
Mm-hmm.
We got to give the HOA something. Honestly, might be HOA, just in the sense of, I think, because what is it?
No, it's just the jungle. It's just too physical.
I like that. We're going to trademark that one. That's the one. The jungle is all right. All right. We got to start writing these down, because I don't want to forget them in the future. We're going to start writing these down, because we still got to give, and GPAC, Crossroads, don't think we forgot about y'all. We will come up with one for you guys as well.
For sure.
Kind of came late to the party with that, but we'll come up with one for you guys as well. I like that one. That was solid, my brother. That was solid. But yeah, so in the jungle, to give up 11 rebounds is going to be tough on any given night. This team had their first conference win against Graceland. They were losing at one point after the third quarter by 4. You score 27 in the fourth. Goes to your point. There's an upside. There's a team here that can pull out close games. There's a team here that can fight tooth and nail and be able to pull out some big wins. Road woes. 4-11 on the road. Need more. Need more than that.
Yeah, that's not it.
Need more than that. They lost 7 straight at one point on the road, like specifically road games. That can't happen. The HOA is too strong. The jungle is too. You ain't always gonna be able to be in your own neck of the woods. You got to be able to go out and win a good amount of games, not just like a good amount of games throughout the season. This kind of goes why I'm a little high with Park over Culver here. Their season low in points in that 7-game losing streak was against Park. Park held them to 57 points per game. That's why I feel like there's a lot of these teams in this conference that are kind of, because of the late game element.
Yeah.
For me at Culver, they're going to be a good team, and I think that they're going to be a formidable opponent in this conference. Some of these woes, though, for me, especially late game, it's too much. Because there's one thing losing the fourth quarter and losing a lead that happens to the best teams, but giving up almost 30, but then you also almost score 30 in another game. There's a lot going back and forth there that I don't know if it's can be too consistent for them.
For sure.
3 games that I like: Bethel. Another team's going to be playing Bethel. There's a classic, I forget the name of it, that a lot of these teams are going to be doing. I believe Bethel's hosting it. So I'm excited to see the competition that comes out of there. University of Health and Science Pharmacy, Coach Markel Cox. I think the only reason I have them on here is because after talking to him and having a good talk with him, even though we haven't previewed the AMC yet, I do feel like they're going to have a better year this year, and it's just a scrappy team, turning a program around. That's why I have them here. And your conference opener is going to be at Grandview. That's your conference opener on November 15th. Tough test early on. Again, on the road, can you avenge that? Very curious to see how they do for the Culver-Stockton Wildcats. Last team before we finish the question 3, and then we get into our tiers list here. Clarke Pride. Out of these 2 teams, I'm higher on Clarke. I'm going to say it off rip. I'm going to take one player from you that I want to talk about because I really think she's going to have a big year, and I think you know who it is, and I'm sure it's what you're going to say. Zoe Kennedy. First team all-conference member. She was a sophomore last year, mind you. There's 2 other sophomores that I know Lex is going to talk about, and a junior. This junior senior class coming in this year, nasty work for Clarke. There might be some nasty work for Clarke. I'm not going to lie to you. But in Zoe's case, 18 points a game, 45 from the field, 36 from the 3-point line, about 4 attempts, so pretty efficient, and 86 from the free throw line. The girl's efficient. There's no such thing as inefficient in her vocabulary. She's efficient at all 3 levels. You love to see it. 7 rebounds, almost 5 assists. She also had a career high 36 against Benedictine. That's hard to do against a great team like that. So,
for sure, especially in the HOA.
I'm big on Zoe Kennedy. I'm big on what she can do. For the Clarke
I'm on the Kool-Aid.
I'm on the Kool-Aid. For the Clarke team, and I'll pass it on to you after this one, that Benedictine game wasn't the best. You lost 100 to 70, to lose by 30, and then to also have a game where you lose 102 to 52. There's some place, lot of, but that's an anomaly. I'm chalking that up to an anomaly. Sometimes it's just not your night. It's not your night.
Exactly. Sometimes you just wake up and the ball's not falling in your direction.
That happens. So, but talk to me about this Pride team again. Like you said, you are close. I know you're big on Zoe Kennedy, but I know you're also big on some of these other players. So, a team that literally got in on the last day of the regular season with their win on senior night. I believe they won against Peru 86-73. So it was a very not dominant, but very solid win that earned them their spot in the final in the conference tournament. What do you like about this Clarke Pride team the most?
Haley Walters, they have solid front core with 10 points, 31 from the 3 with 3 rebounds to add on top of that. Sydney Morris coming back with 9 and 7. That's essential with this team right here. You have Josie Potts also coming back with 7 and 3. For that right there, on top of the star power of Zoe Kennedy, it provides you with the recipe for success. And the recipe that can definitely take them a lot higher than you think you would place them. Yes, we also have to acknowledge what they're losing with Macy Kucha, 13 all conference with 10 and 5. But I definitely feel like Haley Walters can step up to that plate and definitely provide that missing factor. And other pieces within their roster and who they're bringing in their recruiting, 11 people are returning. That's a lot, especially for somebody who experienced what they did, barely making the playoffs having that experience under their belt and experiencing the postseason, going into the year with basically the same group, and if not the same group, the same front leading group, that's all the motivation they need to be able to cause a riot.
On that note, for the newcomers, the roster breakdown this year: 8 freshmen, 7 sophomores, 5 juniors, 2 seniors. I am specifically looking at I have here my notes. Junior leap incoming: Zoe, Josie, and Sydney. And I'm gonna throw Haley in there because she had a good year last year, and she's one of the 2 seniors. Like, you only have 2 seniors. In my case, you're all juniors. You're all in the same class, whatever you want to say.
Basically,
I think that they need to have a big year. If those 3 specifically, Zoe, Josie, and Sydney, all have the E's, Zoe, Joey, and Sydney, they all have the season I think they can have, led by Joey. And then I think Sydney and Josie just need to pass 10 points. I think if they can have a legit big 3 almost, quote unquote, I think they could be a serious player to go from not just 8th, maybe even flirt with hosting a first round in the conference tournament. I think that's completely within the realm of possibility for them. Legit contenders, a little bit more of a stretch when you see it on the court, but I like this team. I'm high on them too, just like you are. Few games to note for them. They play against Don on the 31st of October, obviously Halloween. Then their conference opener is going to be at Missouri, at MBU, and St. Francis. Keep them on the schedule. The team from the Crossroads, I like them. I think they're going to be a good team. But that is going to wrap up the entire HOA. To ask the question again, who from 9 through 13 will join 5 through 8, who comes out, and who from 5 through 8 will join 1 through 4 and come out? We both said for joining, I'm going with Graceland, you're going with Central Methodist, correct?
Mm-hmm.
For coming out of the 5 through 8, who do you have coming out that will be replaced by the Central Methodist Eagles?
Mount Mercy.
Mount Mercy. I really want to say that I want to go against you, but in this case, I think I'm going to stick with you. I think Mount Mercy, because out of the other 3 teams we talked about, I'm just too excited, too high on them. And again, nothing against Mount Mercy, but a new coach, you don't know what you're coming back. You're losing a lot. It's just, I think it could be the safe pick, but I just feel like it's the most logical pick. Sometimes you got to go with the safe pick because it just makes the most sense.
That's the safe pick. My other pick will be Park, and that's more of my logical pick. It just goes into you can't give what you get. Like there has to be a bigger gap in between that.
I get it. Now, second part of that question: who from 5 through 8? So, and now this is adding in Central Methodist. So, if for whatever reason you think Central Methodist is going to go 1 through 4, they can completely do that as well. Who
Not
5 through 8?
Not happening.
But I just want to put it out there in case you want to be a little risque. Who 5 through 8? So for both of us, it's Park, Clarke, and Culver-Stockton. Which of those 3 teams do you think is going to join 1 through 4?
I'm going to go away from what you're saying, and I'm going to throw in William Woods. I think William Woods is going to come in and very much cause a storm.
This chair could flip. I'd be on the ground.
Do it. It can.
All right, so who's coming out?
Who's coming out?
Yeah. I need to know. If you're going to put a brand new team in the top 4 in the HOA, in the jungle, I need to know.
Missouri Valley.
I like it. I can understand that. I don't think it's a shock where I'm going to go with. Park, I think, makes that leap into the top 4.
On that Kool-Aid, too heavy.
I think Benedictine might make the step back. I'm going with the reigning conference champions. I think they make the postseason again, but since you're going to go Missouri Valley, I'm going to go.
I'm not mad at it.
I'm going to go Benedictine. I think it's just going to be tough. It's going to be tough for them to do that. But to recap, I believe that Benedictine will come out of the 1 through 4, going 5 through 8. Park will go 1 through 4 in their place. And then I also believe Mount Mercy will go back 9 through 13, so miss the postseason, and then be replaced by Graceland. Lex, tell the people at home what your recap is. 1 through 4, who's coming out?
1 through 4 coming out is Missouri Valley.
Who's coming in?
Coming in would be, what did I say again? Oh, William Woods. William Woods.
It was so crazy. Your body, your mind said, wait a minute. Did I really? You said that. And
no, I definitely did.
5 through 8, who's coming out?
5 through 8, we said Mount Mercy.
And then who's coming in for you?
Coming in would be Central Methodist.
All right, so there you have it. Now to wrap up this part of the episode and send the people over to the frontier up in the north. It's gonna be very interesting, I feel like. So the people at home can understand what was coming up. The tiers list. We gotta name this tiers list. The way too early tiers list. So we're gonna start calling this officially. Contenders, meaning teams that we believe will win the regular season or the conference tournament. We can only pick 3. Playoff locks, teams that we believe will be in the playoffs in any order, but they will be in the playoffs. We're going to go 4 teams there. At the door are teams that we believe can make the postseason. They're knocking at the door. They're ringing the doorbell. They're trying to get in. They could possibly get in. And then break right are teams that we believe to make the postseason, everything's got to go your way. Everything's got to go your way. You got to get the nice end of the stick to be able to get in the postseason. Those are the breakdowns. You see the numbers there. Start at the bottom like we always do. Lex, who is your first break right team?
First break right team is William Penn.
I'm there too. So we can agree with that. William Penn. My first break right team, crazy. I'm sure coming that I'll be saying it to you. William Woods. Feel like it's kind of. I'm not saying it because I think they're not going to make the playoffs, but I just feel like you can't, like that, I can't wait to see where you have them, is all I'm going to say. Who is your other team that you have?
Peru State.
I'm there with Peru State as well. Now, I want people to understand what I'm about to say.
Oh, Lord.
You understand what I'm about to say? I have, and this is a little crazy, and it kind of shows you how far I've come. On this paper right now, I have Graceland in my break right. I know what I just told them, they're gonna make the postseason, but the reason I'm not gonna change it, and again, this is more, they're on the cusp of at the door, and who knows, maybe after this I flip them with like a CMU spoiler. And I might just do that, honestly. But I feel like CMU and Graceland, similar to why we have them as those teams that going in, they could or they can't. Like, they're on that edge. I think there's a gap between Peru, William Penn, and William Woods, and Graceland in the sense of odds to make the postseason. Who is that? That's my explanation for it. I might change that to be CMU. We'll see after we talk a little bit more about it. But who's your 4th team in the break right department?
My 4th team, and this might be the one that really shocks the board to hear about Mount Mercy.
I'm not mad at it. Funny enough, I feel like the reason you went Mount Mercy is the same reason I went William Woods. New coach, they're technically a new team in the conference in the sense of, again, new coach and stuff. So I'm not mad at it. They're another team that I was contemplating, and maybe I'll go with them to be a break right team. Actually, I think I will. So I'll put Graceland at the door, and I'm going to put Mount Mercy in break right. So we have almost the exact same break right. So at the door, obviously I said Graceland, Central Methodist. Who are your first 2?
Clarke.
And?
Graceland.
Okay. All right. Park is interesting. That's interesting. That's interesting for me. The other team I have is Baker. Who do you have?
Baker.
Is Park closer to playoff lock or break right for you at the door?
They are closer to
Just curious.
playoff lock.
Okay, I'm good with that. I just feel like that was the only thing my question. So
yeah.
So to recap so far, for me, and you'll give your two tiers so far. Break right for me: Mount Mercy, Peru, William Woods, and William Penn. Who are your 4?
I have William Penn, Peru, Mount Mercy, and I didn't do a 4th.
You didn't do a
yet.
4th? Oh, so what was your 4th? And while you think I'll give my at the doors, I went Graceland, Baker, and CMU.
Honestly,
all I want is honesty.
I'm moving Baker to my break right,
Okay.
and then my last at the door is
at the
going to
door.
be CMU.
So who's your at the door then? CMU, Graceland, and who? And Park, you said.
Park.
Okay. All right, got it. So that's our recap. Now we're going playoff locks again. 4 teams. I'll give you my 4, and you can give me your 4. I'm going Park, obviously.
Clarke.
Culver-Stockton, excuse me. Benedictine.
Okay.
And then Missouri Valley. Those are my 4. I'm comfortable with that. I'm going with those 4. Who are your 4?
Clarke. Culver-Stockton.
Okay.
William Woods.
Yes.
Benedictine.
All right. This is where I'm going to shake up the board. I'm going Clarke with contenders. I'm high on Park. I'm higher on Clarke. I think they're returning a lot. I think they're gonna be a real player. Again, am I saying they should be the favorites? No. Am I saying that they are closer to the top of contenders than playoff locks? No. But again, Benedictine, you're losing a lot. Missouri Valley, you're losing a lot. I could not put them in there just off of that strength, and I think Clarke has a better chance of surpassing Park and having a really, really good year than Park having a really good year and going up, because I just think that they just have a better opportunity, in my opinion.
Well, your opinion is your opinion. That's all I can say.
I also round out, obviously, with MidAmerican and Grandview. Who are your 3?
MidAmerican, Grandview, Missouri Valley.
That's an interesting take. That's not that cool of a take. That's a hot take, in my opinion. Lukewarm, temperature warm.
Your opinion also has Clarke up there, so is it really that valid?
I believe it is. I believe we're about to find out in a couple months, but I believe it is. But to recap for all the people at home, my contenders for the HOA, nicknamed the Jungle, for the physicality you got to deal with on any given night. Your break right teams for me: Mount Mercy, Peru State, Penn, William Woods. You're at the doors: Mount Mercy, Graceland, Baker, CMU. Your playoff locks: Park, Culver-Stockton, Benedictine, Missouri Valley. And my contenders for the HOA in our way too early tiers list on August 4th: MidAmerican, Grandview, and Clarke. Lex, tell the people at home what you got.
Break right: William Penn, Peru State, Mount Mercy, and Baker. At the door: Graceland, Park, and Central Methodist. Playoff locks for Clarke, Culver-Stockton, Benedictine, and William Woods. And your contenders are MidAmerican, Grandview, and Missouri Valley.
There you have it. That is our 2025-2026 conference preview for the HOA Heart of America. Very excited. Appreciate you guys if you stuck with us all the way through. Now we're going to pass it on to the two of us as we talk about this brand new, very excited to talk about this, the Frontier Conference. A lot to get into with them. So please stick along, and before you get over there, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, do all that kind of stuff. I'm sure I'm going to say it again in the next part of the episode, but it doesn't hurt hearing it again. Again, if you've been with us the whole time, we appreciate you guys, and we will catch you guys, hopefully, over there on the Frontier. I Hoop Report Nation, it's your boy Manny here, and I know we typically don't intro the second part of the episode on a continuation thing, but had to call an audible. Lex was unable to record this second part of the episode, so gotta bring in someone new, someone that is just as excited as Lex to get to know the NAIA women's basketball scene, and someone who has been around it in the past as well as recently as last year. So please give it warm round of applause to Miss Jasmin Fontella as we get ready to preview the Frontier Conference. Jasmin, thank you so much for joining on and taking Lex's spot for this episode. You came in at a crazy time, arguably the most interesting, the most unknown conference of the year in the Frontier is the one that we're going to tackle right now. And the reason I say this for those who don't know, the North Star Athletic Association is no longer a conference in the NAIA. So the remaining 5 teams joined the Frontier, One team did go to the Division II level in the NCAA, and that being University of Jamestown. So now the Frontier is up to 11, and then they also added in a JUCO that was a JUCO last year into the conference this year. So then now out of 12, they went from having 6, I believe they had last year in the Frontier. Yeah, they had 6. Now they doubled that in one offseason. So it's going to be a lot of new things going on for the Frontier, a lot of questions. I think the Frontier got stronger, in my opinion. Even though Lex is not here, we will still have the same start as we always have. In this case, instead of Lex's corner, it's going to be Jasmin's corner. So, Jasmin, what exactly did you notice? Did you take away? Did you just find out about the Frontier and this being your first time kind of looking into a semi-deep dive going off of everything that we've seen? What did you take away from the Frontier for the coming season?
I mean, I looked at it, and when I look at it, the thing that caught me is like you have a lot of returners. I feel like all these teams are having a lot of returners that are coming back, and most importantly, I feel like that's both a big thing for teams, especially coaches, that if you have people that have the general gist of what your program's about and what you play and how you play, I feel like it's easier sometimes to integrate more people into that. But I feel like the biggest thing is they have a lot of people that are coming back and that get it and they want to fight.
I think that's the biggest reason for me so excited for the Frontier, because it's one thing if you add in like all the teams and it's a whole new team, a whole new era, that's one thing. But the fact that you're going to have so many teams that, like you said, have maybe three or more returning players and key returning players, not just, people that we, weren't rotation players or weren't big time impact players. We have all conference members, award winners that are going to be coming back for the Frontier and their respective teams. And we'll segue in that to our standings and our recap for last year's Frontier and the North Star. Like you see at the top there, the Frontier, Rocky Mountain was your regular season, and they were also going to be your number 1 seed. Providence, Carroll, Montana Tech, MSU-Northern, and Montana Western will round out the 6 for the Frontier. You see at the top there also the top 4 teams. Rocky Mountain, Providence, Carroll, and Montana Tech all made it to the national tournament. At the bottom, you have the North Star, their final season for the NAIA. Dakota State, Mayville State, Bellevue, Valley City State, and Dickinson State were the 5 teams. Again, Jamestown was a part of the North Star, but no longer in the NAIA. The only team that made it to the national tournament was Dakota State. A lot of information on the recap for the Frontier and the North Star. At the top, you see regular season champions for Rocky Mountain. For the regular season champions were Rocky Mountain, and then the conference tournament champions were Providence. First team all conference, second team all conference, honorable mention, and defensive team for the Frontier Conference. And at the bottom, you see your postseason awards: Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, Freshman of the Year, Sixth Woman of the Year, and Coach of the Year. Congratulations to everybody from the Frontier that had either an all-conference nod or a award, or both in some cases. And then you have the North Star, bottom of the screen there. Regular season champions and conference tournament champions were Dakota State. First team, second team, all conference teams there. Honorable mention as well as defensive team. And then your postseason awards to the bottom right there. Very, very much congratulations to all you who were able to get a nod, able to bring home some hardware for you personally and for your program. Very excited. Because this conference is so deep, I think it's very easy to talk about 100 different questions, but we're going to stick to our 3 main storylines for the coming year. First one being, which returning class are you most intrigued about? Then we have, what does Dakota State becoming a member mean for the top of the conference for the Frontier from last year? And then what does it mean for Dakota State personally? And then we have, which race will be tighter in a now presumed 8-team playoff, either the race for first or the race for 8th. And we will, of course, we'll have our way too early tiers list at the end of the video. This is going to be a very tough, maneuvering because of all these things. We normally go kind of in order of our standings, but because we have 2 conferences, it's going to be a little bit different. We'll start with Rocky Mountain. They were and are the reigning regular season champions. The Bears had a great year. They had a great year. And again, the first question is going to be, which returning class are you most excited for? We'll touch on everybody as quickly as we can so we can kind of answer that question. We'll kind of answer at the end. But to start with the Rocky Mountain Bears, Jasmin, what about this returning class excites you? Who are some key players in the returning class that you're really excited to see? Just kind of give us an overarching view for this Rocky Mountain team for returning as well as the rest of the team.
Well, I mean, When you look at returning, you got 3 solid returners coming back. I mean, first you got Paige Watson, second team all conference, freshman of the year. I feel like that's big for her. Was averaging really points per game, like 11.3, which is crazy, and 7 rebounds. And then you have Ileana Morin. She had 9.8 points per game. She had 3.3 assists. She would also have a 40.2 field goal percentage, which is I think is also important to know. And then you got Isabella Heggen. She was 8.9 points per game, 5.4 rebounds, and 45.3 field goal percentage. And then with them being threes, 30% of them were threes, which I think is crazy. And you have to really think about that. From that percentage, if you think about it, like 95% of that percentage is field goals. And then I think most importantly, they have their coach coming back, and he got coach of the year. So when you have a coach that's like that, it's kind of important to have good backbone of the year.
I do think those key returners that you mentioned in Paige, Ilian, and Isabella, they're going to be the spearhead for this returning class. I do think having a coach of the year, and it's going to be crazy technically having 2 coaches of the year in the same conference because we're going to have a coach of the year from the North Star from last year going into the Frontier. But I do think Coach Wes Keller had a great year last year, and this team did a lot in their in this year, I should say. First time where they were outright champions of the regular season since 1987-88. The Bears were co-champions in 21-22. So that was a big year for them. That was a big kind of monkey off their back. They were 22nd in the NAIA in opponents' points per game, 58 points per game, 9th in fouls, so they weren't really fouling a lot. This team made their bread and butter on defense. They made their bread and butter on defense. That was what they do, and that's what they know they can do. The team was 16-0 when opponents scored less than 60 points per game. It's very hard to do. On the opposite side, they were 4-11 when teams scored over 60 points. So you could see that was kind of the measuring stick. That was kind of the bar. If you're able to hold them under 60, or if they were able to hold opponents under 60, they're probably going to get that win. If they didn't, it's going to be a lot closer of a game and maybe doesn't go in their favor. The key for the returning, and I'll let you get to what they're losing next year, but the key for the returners for me is going to be those 2 freshmen that we mentioned. The freshman of the year in Paige and Isabella. I think that duo might be able to take a leap next year. I think they're going to be very, very, very good. 32 games combined. 32 games over 10 points per game, over 10 points, 20.2 points combined, 12.4 rebounds combined. I just feel like when you had the year that they had, and yes, while Paige won freshman of the year, I'm sure Isabel had a very close chance of winning. It could have been co-freshman of the years. I'm sure there was some talks of that, and I think they would have been very happy with that for either one winning it or them both kind of sharing it. I just feel like when you have a situation like this with 2 freshmen that are so good in their first year, you can only expect more. You can only expect them to elevate their game to another level. With that being said, Ileana, 17 games with 10-plus points, including 3 in a row to end the season. She ended on a good note. I think she can't be overlooked as maybe being the number 1 option, and I say that loosely in the sense of I do think the freshman duo are the future, the next 3 years for Rocky Mountain, but specifically talking about next year, I think Ileana can step into that role and be a 10-point-per-game scorer for sure. She was basically there at 9.8. I think she's going to be very, very important, but I do look at that freshman duo being the baseline for success, offensively speaking, for this Rocky Mountain team, because defense, again, we know that's where their bread and butter is. But even though the defense is kind of what they do, they are missing a lot. Talk about what they're missing and who they're missing, both on defense as well as on offense.
To start off with that they're losing, we start off with Sydney Daffman. She was a third team All-American, which is that's really important for them. But she was a first team All-Conference and newcomer of the year. And she would average 16.2 points per game and then have 5.7 rebounds. Then she would shoot 50% of free goal. And then 35.6 3-point field goal percentage, and then her free throw percentage is 81.5, which I think is a big number. I mean, that's important. A lot of people say you got to make your free throws, and those are free points, and you take them, and if you make them, that's big game changers. It could be a difference between 1 point to a 2-point game, maybe even 3. Then you're looking at Grace Lavoid. She was a second all-team conference and defense player of the year, so that's a big point on there. She was all defender. And then she had 11.4 points a game with 5.5 rebounds, which I think is also big numbers for her that they're losing. And I think combined they're losing. It's just 2 players, but it's a big part of the team that they're losing.
And to the parts on each side of the ball. Sydney, obviously, more. Again, two-way players. We don't got to talk about that, but we know that Sydney is and was the leading scorer last year, 16 points per game. You're losing that. You're obviously going to be looking for somebody to step in and fill those points. Like you mentioned, even the free throws, 81% from the free throw line is about as good as an ATM. That means you're going to get everything that you shoot at that line. If you're losing that, you're going to be looking for somebody to be able to step into that role. And then Grace, all defensive team, defensive player of the year. What goes underlooked, and we've said it before in other conference previews, the rebounds of defense. You can play great defense for the whole 29 seconds of that 30-second shot clock. If you don't get the rebound at that last second, now you got to do it all over again. And that's just going to wear you down. It's going to be a mental drain on you. So I do think that's an important part of this team next year. Who steps up as the face or as the leader on the defensive side of the ball, and then who can step into that offensive role and be someone that they can rely on any given night. This team is going to be a real contender in this Frontier Conference. They're not going to have a step back just because some of these new teams are joining in or something like that. They're going to still be at the top of the conference. Where in the top? We'll wait and see, and we'll talk about that later on in this episode, in this part of the episode. But this team is going to be there. The Bears are not going to be easily moved from their top seed from last year. But we go from that team to the team that ended up winning the Frontier Conference tournament, the Providence Argos. This Providence team felt like they could have been the number 1 seed. This Providence team is legit. They just won their second straight Frontier Conference tournament title. They had a 7-game winning streak going into the national tournament, including 5 in conference. This team was on a heater going into the national tournament, and they did a great job throughout the regular season. Talk to me about the returning class, because they might have one of the best returning classes. They have, right here, you have 5 players in returning. I think they could be arguably the best returning class coming in back this year.
I guess, like you said, they have 5 players coming back. That's basically almost a starting lineup that they have that has experienced that could do it. You have Kiana. She's first team all conference and all defended team. Like, she's there. 16.3 points per game with 10.3 rebounds, which is really impressive to have that high of a number, especially with rebounds. And you got Talia Lee. She's 9.6 points per game, then 4.5 rebounds with a 43.5% field goal percentage. Then you look at Monique Carter. She has 8.3 points per game, which is nice. And then she's third most field goals. So she's made, out of 22, she makes 22 free goals. That's 33% of a field goal. So she is on there with her 3 points. And then you look at Ileana Ramirez and Ansley Turnberg. 12.2 per game with 7.2 rebounds, which is pretty impressive too.
To have those that combined for those last 2, I do think it's good that you mentioned them, because they cannot be overlooked. They need to be put in. Like you mentioned, you're pretty much bringing back a starting 5. Will all of them start? We don't know. But to have that type of experience going into this next year, where you're going to have so much turnover and so many new things and so many new elements, it's a thing that's very important. This team, they lost to College of Idaho in overtime by 2 in the national tournament. So it took a team playing almost perfect to finally end their season. And just to show you, even though they did not end the year the way they wanted it to, there was so much good that happened last year towards the end with the tournament title, with the 7-game winning streak, that you can't be more excited if you're a Providence fan, and you have to be, I should say, concerned or weary of this Argos team coming into this year. This team is going to have another year under their belt. They do have, I'm not going to say who they are, but they do have an incoming transfer. I have it here in my notes. 1 word, 3 letters. Wow. So all I'm going to say, it is a great, great pickup for them. I think it could really, really boost them, not just in the Frontier, but I know it's really early, but we're talking about possibly national, like, contender type of level is what this transfer is. All we're going to say, they were a top 10 scorer in the NAIA last year. Very, very capable scorer, and someone that can just be a plug-and-play player. She's going to be able to just fit in seamlessly with this group. I think she's going to be very, very important for this team. I'm not going to say they're the team to beat, but they are my team that I'm most comfortable giving them that title to. So we got to see. They just really, like, it's taking a lot for me right now. Not to say they are the team to beat and just let's rock with it. I'm trying to be, understand that we're still in August and no one's even, some schools have gotten back to camp yet. Not everybody's gotten back to camp yet. Like, I understand all that. So I'm not trying to jump the gun just yet, but just know that I'm very excited with this Providence team and what they could be doing. We'll go from Providence now to Carroll. The Fighting Saints of Carroll, again, a national contender team. They made the tournament last year. They did have a key win over Providence by 4. They also had a key win over Rocky Mountain, 70-56. They were very, very good in those games. They fought and lost to Providence in the semifinals by 4, 59-55. This team is a little bit more balanced. I do think these last two teams we talked about, really good returning class. I think they had a very decent crew that's going to be coming back. This year, talk to us a little bit about what they're returning and then what they're losing, because they are losing a very, very key player that was a big-time name last year in the Frontier.
Well, when you look at losing, they're returning, they're returning 8. And right now we have 2 that we're going to talk about, and you have Willa, and she was a first-team all-conference. She would average 14.9 points per game with 7.1 rebounds, and then she would do a 42.2 field goal percentage with 33% of that being 3-point field goal percentage, with an 87.6 free throw percentage, which is even crazier than what the last one we saw that was at 81. Hers is even higher. So she's making, again, more important than any points there. You're making your free throws. And then you have Megan, and she averaged 9 points per game with 3 rebounds and a 45.4 free throw percentage. Field goal percentage, my bad. Then when you go into their losing, so that's 2 returners out of the 8 that are key. Then you look at losing. They're losing Kendall Keller. She was a second-team All-American, which is really important. A first-team All-Conference and Player of the Year. And then she would average 14.5 points per game, 4.2 rebounds, 42.3 field goal percentage with 38% of that being 3-point field goal. And she had an 80% free throw, which is really impressive as well. Then you look at Addie. She was also a second-team All-American, even on the all-defense team, with 11.5 points per game, 3.1 assists, with 3.1 rebounds as well, and 35% of 3-point field goal percentage.
This team, and I know what you meant, and I'm just going to correct you on it. I know you meant second-team all-conference for Addie. I know this conference had a lot of All-Americans, so I'm not surprised that you're going to get them confused and stuff like that. But this team and this conference, one thing we're already seeing, the top, very efficient from the free throw line, very efficient, being able to convert those attempts when they're there. But you can't overlook Kendall Keller. Like, the Player of the Year, first-team All-American, first-team All-Conference, efficient from the field. That's going to be a big hole to fill. You're going to have to look at, and for me, this is the first team in the conference where I'm going to say recruiting class. What are we bringing in? What are we bringing in? Who are we trying to bring in the transfer portal that is going to kind of help? They do have 7 newcomers on the staff, on the team, excuse me. 3 transfers that they feel will be impact players right away, and 1 freshman to keep an eye on. So I do think this team is going to be someone to look, not a team in danger of like dropping drastically. But when you lose a Player of the Year again, when you lose someone like that, it's going to be a little bit of an adjustment period, so to speak, for them next year. They were putting up 60 points per game last year. They were holding teams to 55 points per game. That 5-point gap, I think, is too close. I do need this offense to be a little bit better. I think they can be a little bit better. So I'm looking for, again, the recruiting class. Can they come in and help the offense get to another level? Maybe 65 points, 66 points per game. I think that's going to be a good kind of number to be at in this conference. We go now from Carroll to Montana Tech. They could be a serious player this year. Now, we talked about Providence and how hot they were last year to end the year. 7-game winning streak. They in the national tournament, they went into overtime. That's what it took to beat them. I think Montana Tech was on the other side of that. I think they had an end of the year that they didn't really like. They lost in the conference tournament to a team that I know they felt like they did not need to be losing to. I think Montana Tech thought they could have a serious chance of winning the conference tournament and punching their ticket to the national tournament. Obviously, they ended up making it anyways, but you got to wonder, did that conference tournament loss kind of hurt them a little bit? You'll talk about the returners. They're returning a lot of key players, rotation players, and people who have been around the team. My thing for them is, this is even though they didn't end the year they wanted to, first year that they were in a national tournament, I believe ever, if my notes are correct here, I think they do have a big year brewing, a big year that could kind of come in off the gate, hitting the ground running. Tell us why a big reason of that is because of the returners that they're going to be bringing in, 7 rotation players to be exact.
Yeah, I mean, right now we have probably, I think, like 4 right here on the list, and it goes, you got Hadley. She was a first team all conference. She averaged 13.4 points a game, and she had 5.9 rebounds with 50% of field goal percentage, with 38% of that being 3-pointers. And then you have a 77.6 free throw average, which is actually really well as well. May not be in the 80s, but it's still up there really high. Then you have Liv. She was an all conference. She was an all conference player. She averaged 9 points per game, 3.6 rebounds, 2.3 assists, with a 43% field goal percentage, with 31% being 3-pointers and a 71% free throws. Then you have Avery, and then you have Macy, and they were all in the all defense team with an average of 4.4 points per game with 4.7 rebounds, which I think is also as well really well.
This team is going to be a team that, because the way last year ended, I think they used that to bump themselves and understand that they probably still have that bad taste in their mouth of how the conference tournament went. They probably still have a bad taste in their mouth for how the actual national tournament went. When you have a returning group like this in a year where I think that's going to be the biggest thing and what might separate a lot of these teams, especially early on in the season, you cannot overlook the importance of continuity, chemistry, knowing the system, knowing the coach, knowing each other. I think this team is going to be very, very important. One of the few teams that does have their 2025-2026 schedule out already. So for me, some key games, Southern Oregon on Halloween, that's going to be crazy. I think that'll be a great, great test for them early. I think, talking about some scary hours for them. College of Idaho, again, a team that we saw beat Providence last year in the national tournament. That's going to be another game to watch. And their conference opener is against one of the newcomers in the Frontier at Mayville. That'll be on the 21st of November. So a team that I think very excited for is Montana Tech. They do they were one of the coaches that did get back to me for the Google form. And again, if it's your first time, I did send out a Google form at the beginning of the year. Some coaches got back to me, some coaches didn't. If you didn't, that's all right. We understand you're busy, but some of them did get back. And for this team, this is actually their 3rd recruiting class all time. And the coaching staff is very excited. You know, as a first-year coach, you can't really get too much of the recruiting done because, you know, you're still getting some of the players from the previous team and all that kind of stuff. Second year, you're kind of getting your footing. But by the 3rd year, this team is yours. This team is now yours. You're bringing in everybody. This is going to be the first year that I feel like they feel they have fingerprints on this recruiting class. So they're very excited for that. You're returning a good core group from a team that made the national tournament for the first time in 14 years. Another team that, so again, not the first time ever, but in 14 years, it might feel like the first time ever by how long it's been. So I'm excited to see what this Montana Tech team does and what this Montana Tech team can continue to do as the year goes on. We go from them now to, I would say, MSU-Northern, but we don't have any stats on them. The website just didn't really have anything, so I'll brush over them real quick, and then we'll go over to Montana Western, and then we'll head into the North Star. For MSU-Northern, again, they had a great win in the quarterfinals versus Providence, but that's pretty much it. You know, I have them here as a question mark, literally because we don't have any notes on them. As far as we know, if we're going off of, you know, class ranking, all that kind of stuff, they're returning Kansas, his bad horse, 2nd team all-conference member, 13-6, 50% from the field, 31% from the three-point line, and then 78% from the free throw line. They may be losing Caitlin Forner, who was an all-defensive team, but that's pretty much it. Again, that's all that we know. They do have their schedule out on the website. All games are conference games. I don't know if that's going to stick, if they're just waiting to add some non-conference games later. But as of right now, they have all non-conference games lined up. Their first opener is going to be against Providence at Providence on the 18th of November. So we head over now to the last official team from the Frontier from last year in Montana Western. New coach, and like we do around here, we like to give coaches a round of applause for when they get their job. Ryan Sullivan will be taking over the Bulldogs this year. A lot of returners here. So while it's a new era, there may not be too much of a new era needed for Coach Sullivan here. Talk to us about some of these returners that I think could be a very, very good. They could be very, very good for a coach in their first year to not have to do everything all over again. I got a good launching pad. I got a good set of foundations. Talk to us about these returning players for this year.
You look at it, you got 5 returners coming back. So that's one thing. Again, another team that has a starting lineup basically there. Again, we don't know if they all are going to start or anything like that, but it's actually nice to have at least a good 5 core. You go to Trinity Nicholas, she averaged 10.4 points per game, 3.5 rebounds with 2 steals, which is very well. With a 41.9% field goal percentage, 36 of that percent is 3-pointers. And then she also had a 70% free throw percentage, which is really well. Then you go to Isabella Lung. She averaged 9.9 points per game with 3.4 rebounds. Then you look at, she has 41% of a field goal percentage, which is really well too. Then you go look at Kiki. She averaged 8.4 points per game with 6.8 being rebounds, 41% being field goals. So if you really think about it, so far within 3 players, they averaged around 41% when it comes to field goal percentage. And then you got Kenzie. She averaged 8 points per game, 3.7 rebounds, and a 44% of field goal percentage as well. Then you look at the last but certainly not least, got Maddie. She averaged 77.1 points per game with a 5.9 rebound, 2 steals, and 38%. So if you field goal percentage, which if you really think about it, between all 5 players, you're ranging from 38 to about 44%, 45%.
And I think
which is actually really well.
I think that's a good point to harp on. And don't worry, so many numbers. We're gonna be fumbling over these words over our numbers for the next couple minutes here. I think that's the biggest point. The field goal percentage. This team is efficient. They're really, really efficient, and I think it helps Coach Sullivan just because I don't have to come in and implement something brand new. Yes, he's gonna bring in his own staff, his own style, his own defense, his own offense. Oh, I get that. But you have a foundation of an efficient group that knows how to play well. You have the reigning 6th Woman of the Year in Trinity Nichols. I think if this team is brewing. I know you're kind of high on them, and we'll kind of put a bow on this part of the episode with going back to the initial question. Which returning class are you most excited for, most intrigued in? Who are you most intrigued in for the Frontier or from the original Frontier teams from last year?
For me, I think I'm more intrigued in, I like Providence. I like Rocky Mountain. I feel like they got really good base, but if you really think about it, when it comes down to it, I think Montana Western has a good, foundation. They do have a new coach, which, some people will be like, oh, that's a little risky, or, it's kind of going to be hard to adapt to a new coach. But I honestly feel like if you have those core 5, I feel like the adaptation won't be as bad or as hard to do.
And I think, and again, when we say returning class, we don't just mean a team that's going to go win the conference tournament or national like that. Returning class is returning class. I think they're a good pick to be an actual locked-in playoff team. I think that they have the potential. They do have some tremendous upside. Again, they could do something a little crazy next year, but I like the pick. For me, I am going to stay up top, though. I'm going to go with Providence just because, like I mentioned, that transfer that's going to be coming in, what you already have, and you plug her in, could make you one of the best offenses in the country. That's how far I'm going with it. So I'm very excited to see what this Providence team can do. From the returning, I would have already excited for it. But now when you add in who this player is and what she can do, I'm even more excited for what they're going to be able to do. So now we move over to the North Star for the first time. this episode. Again, officially the North Star teams. Only 5 teams that we're going to be touching on here. Dakota State going to be the first team. They are Dakota State. They have been the team to beat for the North Star for the better part of a decade. I mean, when you look at here, you've got Coach David Moe, who's a coach of the year for the 6th time last year. So he's built a powerhouse out there in the North Star. I don't think we need to harp on it too much. This team is legit. This team is excited. We'll talk about it real quick and what they're returning in. Tabor Teal, 2nd team All-American, 1st team All-Conference, Player of the Year, All-Defensive Team. Like, she was filling up the stat sheet. The stat sheet's longer than the Chick-fil-A line. It's all there. You know, we don't need to talk too much about this Dakota State team. Just know we're going to get back to them in the second question. That's why I don't want to touch on them right now, because they are going to be maybe my biggest question mark, not because of what they can do personally, but because what they mean to this conference now. So we're going to skip them for right now and go over to the number 2 team from the North Star last year in the Mayville State Comet. They are a team that on paper can go either way. They can go either way. Tell us about the 3 returners and tell us about the 3 that they're losing, because that's why I say they can go either way, because you've got a great returning group, but you are also losing a lot when it comes to this year's team.
Yeah, I mean, when you hit the returning, you have the first one you have is Hannah Stark. She's newcomer of the year. She averaged 7.3 points per game with 3.5 rebounds, and then she had a 36.8% field goal percentage, with 32% of that being 3-pointers. Then you have Misty. She had 7.3 points per game with 3.7 rebounds, 39% field goal percentage, 31% being 3-pointers, and then 78% being free throw percentage, which is crazy. Then you have Annika. She averaged 6 points per game, 5 rebounds. She had 43% of a field goal percentage, 33% of that being 3-point field goals, and she had an 81% when it came to free throws, which I think just that alone, you have 2 people that average almost 80% when it comes to free throws. Again, like I said before, free points, those are important. When you go, no one's guarding you, no one's doing anything. You're just there shooting basketball like you've done our whole life. But now when you look at the losing, you got Mackenzie Hughes. She was 3rd team All-American, 1st team All-Conference. She averaged 20 points per game, which is insane. She had 5.4 rebounds, 3.8 assists, and 2.6 steals. She had a 44.4 field goal percentage, 33% of that being 3-point field goal percentage, with a 79 free throw percentage. Then next, you're looking at Alex Page, 1st team All-Conference, averaged 16.1 points per game, 6.7 rebounds, 53.5 field goal percentage, 40% being 3-pointers, and 77.4% free throws. Then you got Jess. She was an second team All-Conference defensive player of the year, and she made all defensive team. She had 14.7 points per game, 8 rebounds, 5.2 assists, and 4.7 steals, with also having a 38% of field goal percentage, with 33 of that being 3-pointers, and then also a 78.9 free throw percentage as well.
This team, you're losing a lot. Like, again, Mackenzie, 20 points per game. Alex, 16 points per game. Jess, 14 points per game. But I'm intrigued because at the helm, Coach Ryan Carpenter, it's going to be his 3rd year of being the head coach for Mayville State. I think that when you've already put together 2 winning seasons, you have a possible leap inbound for a Hannah Stark and Misty. There's something there. The reason I'm asking a recruiting class and what they're going to be bringing in is because they need a little bit more. I do think Hannah will take a leap up. I do think she'll become a 10-point per game scorer easily, maybe even closer to 12. I think Misty can get up there as well. She's going to get more attempts, more opportunity. Anika, as of right now, last time we checked, she wasn't on the roster. Not to say she's not there, not to say she's not going to be added on later, but again, going to be transparent about our reporting and our coverage and all that kind of stuff. The only question I have for this team is defensive leap. I think they can be a better defensive team. You're putting up 79 points per game. We've talked about it ad nauseum. when you break down scoring, anything under 60, we got to get better at. 61 to about 65, 66, that's about an average to, really good offensive team. 67 to 70, 71, 72, I'd say you're a pretty great offensive team. 73 to 77, or honestly 73 and up if we're being realistic, maybe a little bit higher on the cutoff. You're an elite team. You're an elite team. You're able to put up points with the best of them. They're almost at 80 points per game. They're right there. But when you're allowing 68 points per game, I think that to be such a good offensive team, I don't think you can give teams that much opportunity to score. And going into a conference now in the Frontier where you're going to have so many teams that, like we keep mentioning, free throw percentage is going to be important. They're going to be able to knock down the free throws and make you pay for fouling them. They're going to be efficient from the field as a team, as a collective unit. So you're going to have to drop that opponent's points per game significantly. Maybe not significantly, but 65 even looks a little bit better than 68. So I do think that's my only question. They do have their schedule out. They've got a pretty tough beginning of the year. They're going to be at Hastings and at Grandview, back-to-back days on the 24th and 25th of October. Again, for those who don't know, the opening day for women's basketball is the 23rd of October. And then their conference opener will be against a familiar foe in Valley City. That'll be it'll be in November. This team, again, it's going to come down to a situation of either we see a good leap from your returning group and the incoming transfers and freshmen mesh well, or it's going to be a tough early part. I do think they'll figure it out, but the early part is what I'm concerned about when you're losing such scoring and ability from this team. We go from Mayville State to Bellevue Bruins, who they're an X factor for me because of their offense. I'll let you touch on the returning. For me, it's going to come down to offense because they're putting up 71 points per game last year on 39% shooting from the field as a team and 30% from the three-point line, almost 31%. You're losing first-team all-conference member in Ashton Arnold, second-team all-conference member in Gabby Moore, and then Taylor Demmett and Joseph Mickens. The first two I mentioned, 14 points and 17 points respectively. That's where the offense comes for me. Tell us about the returning group and who we should be looking at to be possibly the replacements or be stepping into that role for the offensive side of things for the Bruins.
The first one you look at it, you got Kaylee. She averaged 9.8 points per game. She also had 5.6 rebounds. Then you have Muhammad. She did 6.5 points per game, and then she had 5.5 rebounds. And the last one you have is Drew. She did 5.1 points per game, which I feel like combined between them, all three of them, is a pretty good point system. Rebounds, at least they're getting, most importantly for me, is they're getting the rebounds. And that's a big thing as well.
I think this team is an X factor because, again, the scoring in a conference like this where scoring might be one of the, and it's easy to say, it's kind of a not breaking news or anything like that, of saying, like, if you score more points, you're probably going to win more games. But in a conference kind of like the opposite of the Mid-South. When we talk about the Mid-South, we talk about their defense being the biggest thing, nicknaming them the Penitentiary Conference because they just lock up everybody. This conference, because you don't know how it's going to play out, they might be the opposite in the sense of there are going to be a lot of teams here, and we've seen they're efficient. They can score the ball. They can really put up points. So you have to be able to do that on every single night. Even when you have an off night, you still got to figure out a way to get points and probably cross. They put up 71 last year. I think you got to stay high 60s, low 70s. And I'm talking about high 60 being like 68, 69. And then I'd be more comfortable saying you got to be between 70 and 72 points per game to be consistently a threat in this Frontier Conference. For them, there are three games that I'm going to be looking for in the beginning of the year. They're going to be at Mount Mercy, which I think will be a good one, versus Midland. Again, we talked about Midland in the GPAC preview. Very good team. I think they could be a sleeper team this year. And then conference opener is going to be against Dakota State. Tough opening round for sure, but a team that they've seen before in the North Star plenty of time, so nothing new for them. But I do think it's going to be a good test on the 15th of November to be playing against them. We head over now to the 4th team in what was the North Star, Valley City, the Vikings. These next two teams we can kind of go through pretty quickly. There's not too much to harp on because I think it's pretty straightforward. do both of these teams, and we'll do them together, Dickinson and Valley City. For Valley City, my only thing for them is they had a big win over Bellevue in the conference tournament. They that was really big, and they only lost to Dakota State by 8. So they were pretty competitive in the conference tournament last year. Tell us some players that could take a leap up, especially one of the reigning freshmen of the year in Abby Elson. Tell us who else along with her is going to be a key player for this Vikings crew.
Well, if you talk about, you already said about Abby, she averaged 13.8 points per game, which is really nice. Then you have 6.5 rebounds. But then you get into JC, she averaged 11.4 points per game with 4.8 rebounds. And then lastly, you got Ellie. She averaged 7.2 points per game with 4.4 rebounds. So around the same, that they're, at least their rebounds, they're all around the same. Getting the ball back, working down, and stuff like that.
This team is maybe the biggest team that could benefit from this merger because you have, like we mentioned, Abby, 13, almost 14 points a game, 6, almost 7 rebounds a game. You're pretty much flirting with a double-double on every single night. When you have that, you've got 2 honorable mention players coming back in JC and Ellie. They are literally the embodiment of a team that just needs something to happen, and they could benefit from this shakeup of now there's going to be a lot more teams in there, and there's more games now. You don't know what's going to happen. These type of things, those teams that benefit from them are the teams that were already on the cusp of doing something really, really impressive. So that might be this Valley City crew. For Dickinson, it's just their offense. Like, they're returning Katie Steele and Anika Shanrock, 12 points per game, 9 points per game. You're losing Samantha O's, which is a second-team all-conference member and all-defensive team. You're losing Catherine, who is a 9-point per game scorer. It comes down to offense for me. Like, I really can't harp on it anymore because outside of those 4 players that we've mentioned already, the next highest scorers were 3.6, 3.2, and 3.1. Who is going to step up? And, Katie, give you an extra 2 to 3 points a night, 15 points per game. Anika, 9 points per game, give you over 10. But who else? Who else is going to step in? And again, a pretty offensive loaded Frontier Conference next year. Who is going to be the one to be able to really score the ball every single night, or at least enough to where it helps the overarching thing? Because the rest of the team outside of those 4, last year they were putting up about 21.2 points per game. Someone's got to step up from in-house. Even if you recruit and you do a great job of bringing in some freshmen and transfers, you still have to have some type of in-house development for them. And that's going to be my biggest thing for them for next year's offense. So we'll wrap up this first question with, again, out of everybody we just talked about, who is the returning class you are most intrigued with going into their first official season in the Frontier Conference?
I mean, I think going into the whole entire new Frontier Conference, I think the one that is intriguing me the most would be Dakota State. I think would be the one that intrigues me the most just because of them they've on top, they've done great. But now when they go into a conference with even more teams that are even, I wouldn't say better, that's not the right terms, but more competition of you have quite a bit of teams. So what are they going to do with now moving from only having 4 other teams in their conference to having 7? Now, what are you going to do?
For me, it's going to be Valley City. And I think that's a great way to segue into question 2 for Dakota State. So we're definitely going to come back to that. For me, it's Valley City just because, like I mentioned, they feel like they were already on the edge of bursting through that glass ceiling, so to speak. So I'm going to rock with them on being a team that, again, when we talk about returning class, we don't necessarily mean a team that, because of your returning class, we think you're going to win the whole conference. No, we mean a team that could really, really take a big step forward, whatever that step is. For some of these teams, it could be make the postseason. For some of these teams, it could be get deep into the postseason. For some of these teams, it is win the conference tournament. But Valley City, I think, falls in between that last 2. They could maybe win the tournament, but I think they're more focused on getting to the tournament and making a deep run in the Frontier Conference. Question 2. What does Dakota State becoming a member mean? And then what does it mean for Dakota State? What does it mean for the conference? And then what does it mean for Dakota State? You talked about it kind of there when we talk about for Dakota State. And there's nothing against the North Star. They're a very good conference. They have some competitive teams. While, yes, Dakota State has been the bar, so to speak, in the North Star, it wasn't easy. It wasn't like that happened overnight. It took time. And since you talked about it from that question, I'll talk about the flip side of it and the other side of that question, which is, what does it mean for the conference as a whole? I'm looking at teams like Providence, like Montana Tech, like Rocky Mountain, like Carroll, like all these teams from last year that were in the Frontier. I'm looking at you guys as understanding that you are now adding a team that at the end of last year's polls, they were the number 8 team in the country. They're one of the best teams annually in the NAIA. How do you respond to now having a not just conference contender, but a red banner contender almost every single year in your conference? You can't just be complacent. You're going to have to be aggressive. You're going to have to be in attack mode, so to speak. It's not just when you play them, but now against everybody else, because you can't have, we mentioned it before, where a team next year like Montana Western, new coach, very good team. You cannot drop those games. You cannot give those teams a chance to upset you in the regular season or in the tournament, because that is going to be a game that maybe hurts you in the long run. The conference that is Frontier, for those Frontier teams from last year, you now have been put on notice, not because of Dakota State, but now because you cannot drop any of those games. We mentioned some teams already last year that dropped some games that they weren't supposed to, and not just the regular season, but in the tournament. Like, you can't drop those games. On the flip side, for North Star, you are now going to be in a conference where you have a chance to make the tournament. You have a chance to make the tournament, but at the same time, you have a chance to miss a tournament. We said it before. There's going to be 8 teams, and I'll take this moment to talk about Bismarck State in a moment here. You're going to have an 8-team postseason. 4 teams are not going to make the tournament. Some of those teams are going to be teams from last year's North Star. You cannot be comfortable anymore with saying we're going to make the postseason, so we just got to be playing our best basketball, make sure we're getting all the little things out, all the details kind of ironed out. No, you have to be able to do that from the beginning, from the first game, whether it's a non-conference, conference game, whatever the case may be. You have to understand that you are going to be measured to a different standard now because of the entirety of this conference from 1 through 12 is going to be a dogfight every single night. And on that note, the last thing that we haven't talked about yet, Bismarck State Mystics. I did some research, found out who this team is and all that kind of stuff. Now, according to the research, they were a JUCO last year in the Mondac Conference. The website does not have any stats or roster or anything like that, so we aren't able to kind of deep dive into it. They do have some key games lined up, and this is kind of how, and to give you guys a behind the scenes of what happened, I was going through the schedules for all the other teams in the North Star or in the Frontier now, and some of them had Bismarck, star or had the Frontier logo next to them, so I was kind of confused. And then I went in and I found out they were apparently joining the Frontier this year, so that's kind of why I believe that they're going to be in there. They do have their schedule up. They play at Dakota Wesleyan, at Jamestown, and the conference openers against Rocky Mountain. Talk about a tough start to your season, because you've got top NAIA program in Dakota Wesleyan, arguably top 15 team in the country, a Jamestown team who is now officially a D2 team, and then you open your conference season against the reigning regular season champions in Rocky Mountain. Talk about a tough stretch. Talk about a definitely not an easy introduction to the Frontier Conference. But like you said, Dakota State, you are now put on high alert, because this is no longer going to be a easy, not easy, that's not the word. It's no longer going to be a conference where you are the standard, because as far as I'm concerned, even though that they have been one of the best, you now have to compete with Rocky Mountain and Providence and Carroll and all these other schools now. So you have to prove that you can still be the best in a conference like this. For the rest of the conference, y'all got a legit contender now added to your schedule, guaranteed game. You have to be able to handle your business when you need to handle your business, and you're going to have to probably take one from Dakota State at some point, especially those top teams. I would love to see teams taking each other one game here, one game there, because that is, I think, the best showing of how deep a conference really is. We'll go now to our final question before we hit into our tiers. With the conference most likely going to 8 teams, again, I have never seen, and I have not seen a conference that has more than 10 teams go to anything less than 8, 6 is really kind of where maybe it goes. If you have 10 teams in the conference, you're probably going to go to, if you have 9, you'll probably go to 6. But when you get to 10, you're probably going to go to 8. It's typically how it works. With that being said, what race do you think is going to be tighter? The race for first or the race for 8th in this new Frontier Conference?
Honestly, in my opinion, I think it's going to be 8th just because of the fact of now all these teams, they've been used to so many years of just being able to, doesn't matter what you do, you're going to make the tournament. You have a fighting chance. Now it's going to be the first year that not every team has a guaranteed shot to be there, to be at the conference tournament. I mean, you see a bunch of teams that were and they just make it to the conference tournament and then whatever happens from there. But I think honestly the tightest race would be 8th because as long as you make it to the tournament, anything can happen, whether you win regular season or if you do, anything can happen. If I make it and you're in 8th, and 8th could win. It doesn't really matter what standing you're in. It just, depends as long as if you make the tournament or not. And I think the tightest thing is making sure that at least someone gets that 8th spot to make it to the tournament to have a fighting chance for that title at the end.
I think what everybody loves about college sports is the fact that it's a one-off. Like, even in a sport like baseball or softball where, you play 3-game series here and there, whatever, when you get to the postseason, it's really one game. Yes, you have to have double elimination, all that kind of stuff, and we get that. But in hindsight, it is just one game. If you can win one game at a time, you're going to eventually end up grabbing a banner, grabbing a trophy, whatever the case may be. There's no 7-game series in college. I like the take, and I can see it. I'm going to go with the first, simply because of what I just said. You now have, for me, the race for number 1 in the Frontier Conference might be the most exciting race in the NAIA next year, aside from, tournament stuff. When we talk about conference per conference, in a world where the Mid-South, the Cascade, the GPAC, even conferences that we haven't talked about yet, like the Southern States and the AMC and all these kind of stuff, in a world where those conferences exist, I don't think you're going to have a tighter race than the Frontiers Conference race for number 1. Why? Off rip, you're going to have Dakota State. You're going to have Rocky Mountain. You're going to have Providence. You're going to have so many teams. And we can look at it right here on the graphic. I truly believe for the number 1 seed next year, you're going to have Rocky Mountain, Providence, Dakota State, Carroll, Montana Tech. I think those 5 teams all legitimately have a reason to believe they will be the number 1 seed in this new and improved Frontier Conference. Because I do think this conference has gotten better. 100% has gotten better. That number 1 seed race, I think, is going to be up there with some of the best in history. You've got teams that all have a good returning group, all have a great coach at the helm, all have a reason to be more motivated this year, whether it's a Montana Tech who maybe had a not so good end of their year, or a Providence who had a winning streak going into the national tournament and continued that winning streak for at least a game or two. We've got a Dakota State who's out there now with the chip on their shoulder for maybe the first time in a long time that's saying, no, we got to prove now that we are able to do this in a new and deeper conference. That race for number 1 truly will be up there with some of the best races I've ever seen. We're talking about legendary stuff that I'm going to be talking to for the next few years about. Like, did you see that race for 25-26 Frontier number 1 seed? And it also depends because when we look at the conference, now who's hosting number 1? Who's hosting? Who gets a bye? Who gets these type of things? Because and we'll go into the tiers after this point that I have here. There are some conferences, and typically speaking, when you get into a number 1, number 2 seed, you're gonna bye. I truly believe, and this might be a hot take, I believe it's better to be a number 3 in a conference. I'm not talking about in a vacuum. I'm not talking about a specific conference. I'm not talking about the Frontier right now. But in a vacuum, I think it's better to be number 3 than number 2 if you can't be number 1. Why? Because if you're number 2 in the conference, you get a bye. Great, cool. You're in the semifinals. But now you don't get a home game. You're going on the road for your first playoff game. If you're a 3 seed, you get to have a first round game in front of your fans, in front of your in your gym, and you're able to kind of build off that. For some of those freshmen or first year players that are in the conference or whatever that never experienced that, I think it's a very important thing to get off your belt. If your first playoff game is in hostile territory, even if though you're the higher seed, it's not the same. So if you can't get the first seed, there's an argument you might want to get the 3rd seed. Again, that's just my take on it. But 5 teams for one spot is going to be tough. And those 5 teams, something might happen. You know, obviously we hope for a great season for everybody, but we never know what could happen. You go through a slump. You go through a tough spell. It's a tough schedule you have coming up. I truly believe that race for number 1 is going to be very, very interesting. But I truly also believe that number 8, it may not be far behind. It might be a situation where I'm just looking at 1 and 8 and just everybody else kind of, that will determine. I think those 2 races will determine the middle. 1 and 8 will determine what 2 through 7 will go through. I think that's a good kind of way to see how these races are going to be so impactful throughout the year. But we'll go now into our contenders list, our tiers list. Again, way too early tiers list for 2025, 2026 in the Frontier. Like we always do, contenders, playoff locks at the door, break right, 12 teams. So we're going to put them all in order. We'll start at the bottom. Jasmin, who are your 3 teams? Each tier will have 3 teams. Who are your 3 teams that you will have in your break right teams or teams that we feel things have to kind of go their way for them to make the postseason?
I have Bismarck State, MSU-Northern, and Dickinson State.
I have those same 3 again. I think we kind of did a good job at explaining why we think that. I think each team has something that they need to work on a little bit more. At the door, teams that we feel like could make the postseason, maybe just miss out on it. Who do you have for your 3 teams?
For me, I have Montana, Western, Bellevue, and Valley City.
Again, same order for me. I think that those 3 teams, they have a good reason to believe that they can really catapult. They also have some things that they need to kind of maybe touch on a little bit here or there. Then we've got playoff locks. Teams we know will be in the postseason. Talk to me.
Carroll, Montana Tech, and Mayville.
I like that. I do think out of those 3 teams, Montana Tech, those are the same 3 that I have in my playoff locks, but I think the gap between Montana Tech, Carroll, and Mayville, like I think those 2 and that one, I think is a little bit bigger. But I do think Mayville has a real case of being a contender and maybe a dark horse contender. But that obviously leaves the last 3 teams being in the contender spot are
Rocky, Providence, and Dakota State.
I think those are the 3 teams that are going to be looked at as the bar, looked at as we're chasing you, or we're trying to get you, because those are 3 teams that I think. Well, I just mentioned the Frontier Conference's first seed race is going to be maybe a 5-team race, a 5-horse race. I think those 3 are going to be the ones that really are kind of fighting when it's all said and done. But that's going to do it for our Frontier and Heart of America previews. We appreciate you guys if you've been with us this entire time. If you just joined us for the Frontier, we appreciate you as well. Don't worry about it. But go ahead and listen to the Heart one. I think it was a good take. I think we've done a good job so far. We're nearing the halfway point of all these conference previews, so we're excited. Jasmin, thank you so much for jumping on and taking over for Darlex. You did a great job, and I know Lex will be very, very proud to have you take over for him on this episode. Who knows? Maybe it might be the first of many in the future. But I really do appreciate you stepping into the role and on such short notice and being able to do this. You did a great job. For everybody else, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, follow us on all our socials, on Spotify, all that good stuff. And we'll see you guys next week for our next conference preview.